coming tonight. Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's a regular council meeting of the City Council of Fort Walton Beach on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. If you have a cell phone, if you please put it on vibrate or turn it off, I'd appreciate that. And tonight, our invocation is given by Pastor Kevin Coverly from Fort Walton Beach Nazarene Church. If you please stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor? Is Pastor here? No, Pastor. All right.
We do have Mr. Locklear.
So, Mr. Locklear, would you like to answer?
You know, whenever the Spirit calls you, you just have to step up.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, gracious Father in heaven, thank you for this occasion to bring us all here. And it's a remarkable occasion because we're getting to honor some outstanding men who served this city for many years. And it's a good day to be here to acknowledge what they've done. Lord, as our council sits before you, give them the discernment to be able to make the wise decisions for our city so that our city can grow and continue and be with us from this day on. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we go to approval of the agenda, Council, I've got a number of changes to make. I have two proclamations this evening. I've got one for the American Red Cross, a second one for the Vietnam Veterans Day on March 29th. So we're adding 5.2 on that. After item 6.3, the recognition of the outgoing mayor and council members, we will have the official municipal election results read by Ms. Barnes. And item 13.5 has been removed from the agenda. It will be moved to the agenda on April 22nd. And Ms. Barnes, is that all the changes? Did I get them right?
Yes, sir, that's all.
Mayor, can I ask for consideration of a couple more? Due to the nature of the items, I'd like to have 13.6, the short term, and the 12.1, the delivery moved towards the end of the agenda so that we can move to the other business before we get to those.
Okay, well, 13.6 is at the almost the very end. Which other ones you like moved back? Or you want to move up?
12.1, to the end of the action item.
All right, I'll put 12.1 in front of 13.6.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other changes to the agenda? All right, with those changes, we need a motion, Council.
Mayor, I move for approval of the agenda with you and Mr. Mead's changes. Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Allegretto and seconded by Councilman Cheever to approve the agenda as modified. Any further comments?
No, sir.
Council, please vote. Does pass unanimously. Thank you, Council. And with that, I'm going to go ahead with the proclamations. The first one, 5.1, for the American Red Cross. Whereas during the American Red Cross month in March, we recognize the compassion of people in Fort Walton Beach and reaffirm our commitment to lending a helping hand to our neighbors in need. Whereas since Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross over 140 years ago, generation after generation has stepped up to deliver relief and care not only across the country but around the world, bringing out the best of humanity in times of crisis. Whereas, advancing this noble mission, the volunteers, blood and platelet donors, and supporters who now give back through the Northwest Florida Red Cross chapter remain unwavering in their commitment to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. Whereas their voluntary and generous contributions shine a beacon of hope in people's darkest hours, whether by providing shelter, food, or comfort during disasters, providing critical blood donations to hospital patients, supporting service members and veterans and their families, saving lives with first aid and CPR and AED and other skills, or delivering international aid and reconnecting loved ones who are separated by global crises. Whereas this work to uplift our community is truly made possible by those who selflessly answer the call to help wherever and whenever it's needed. We hereby recognize this month of March in honor of their remarkable service, and we ask everyone to join in their commitment to care for one another. Now therefore I, Dick Rynearson, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Red Cross Month. And I encourage all citizens of Fort Walton Beach to reach out and support this humanitarian mission. Thank you.
I think they're here.
Oh, and if someone from the Red Cross is here, let me present. Come down, I'll read the second one from the floor. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I absolutely looked out and didn't recognize you, so thank you, and I'll open the floor for your comments.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for recognizing us and reading the proclamation. We really appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, I call upon the citizens if they would consider being involved in their community like we are and join the American Red Cross by going to redcross.org. It would be helpful, and you know, because I'm getting old. I've been doing it since 9/11, and I would appreciate some relief. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
No, sure.
Thank you. I'll read the second one from the floor, although I don't believe the lady who requested it is here this evening. She emailed me earlier today, said she would be out of town. But this is for our Vietnam veterans. Whereas National Vietnam War Veterans Day honors the courageous men and women who served during the Vietnam War, recognizing their service and sacrifice for our nation. Whereas this commemorative day serves as a reminder of the bravery of our veterans and provides an opportunity for our community to pay tribute to those who have often been overlooked or underappreciated for their sacrifices. Whereas the Vietnam War was extensively a divisive issue among the people of the United States, and the crossfire of debate around the country's involvement of the war deprived many members of the armed forces of public support and appreciation of their patriotic service. Whereas the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines who returned from Vietnam were never accorded the recognition and praise that was so routinely awarded to returning servicemen and women in earlier wars. Whereas it is especially important that the extraordinary contributions of America's Vietnam War veterans and the sacrifice of their families be remembered and recognized. And whereas the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017 officially designated March 29th as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Now, therefore, I, Dick Rynearson, by virtue of the power vested in me as mayor, do hereby proclaim March 29th, 2025 as National Vietnam War Veterans Day in the city of Fort Walton Beach. And I call for this observance to be the attention of all our citizens, in witness whereof I hereto set forth my hand. Thank you. Okay. And I have more awards, I just forgot to bring them down.
Your steps there.
Yeah. This is normally the highlight of every meeting when I get to do this. Wesley Folsom, Choctawhatchee High School, are you here? Hey, Wesley, come forward, please. Wesley, I'm going to brag about you a little bit, and then I'm going to give you your ACE Award. Wesley is the Choctawhatchee ACE Award recipient for the month of March. His GPA is 4.53 and is ranked 14th in his class. Wesley is a student of the IB and Advanced Placement programs. He has received academic awards, including the Patricia Keefe Indian Award, Iron Indian Award, acceptance in the National Youth Leadership Forum for Advanced Medicine and Healthcare at Johns Hopkins, and high school level credits from his time in middle school. For his time, okay, I got it. Wesley's extracurriculars include being a member of the National Honor Society, a scholar athlete in football and weightlifting, 100+ hours at HCA Fort Walton Beach Hospital. His skills include an aptitude for STEM subjects, leadership, commitment to community, service, volunteering, and proficiency in boater safety, open water diving. Wesley is described as passionate outdoorsman with interests in hunting, fishing, and conservation. I want to congratulate you, but I want you to tell us what you're going to do next.
All right, so I'm planning to go to college. I haven't figured out which college I'm going to yet, but it's because I'm in the running for several different presidential scholarships, and college is just the first step for me to obtain my dream of becoming an anesthesiologist.
Wesley, congratulations, and we wish you the very best as you move forward and pursue your dream. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. John Deep.
AROR licenses. And I do that.
Welcome, John. Let me brag about a little bit about you. John is a Fort Walton Beach High School's ACE recipient for the month of March. He has a weighted GPA of 4.62 and is a senior on the engineering track. John's extracurriculars and club experience include being the captain of the Fort Walton Beach High School archery team. His work experience includes being an after-school care staff on the after-school staff at Liza Jackson, a gift shop employee at the Eglin Air Force Base Armament Museum, various roles at the Hilton Garden Inn, and various office duties at the Trophy Center. John's skills include Adobe Photoshop, Autodesk Inventor, Autodesk Fusion 360, customer relations, sales, payment processing, and super math skills. His character has been described as fast learning, hardworking, reliable, and punctual. John counts among his references Rihanna Reynolds, the Vice President of Operations for Innisfree Hotels, and Dr. Linda Dugan, Professional School Counselor at Fort Walton Beach High School. We congratulate John on his achievements, and we wish you the very, very best in your future, but you have to tell us what you're going to do next.
Well, a lot like Wesley, I haven't quite figured out which college I'm going to, but partially because I've already been accepted to several. But what I do know, what I do know is that I plan to go into aerospace engineering in the future, hopefully with a master's degree at least.
John, I want to present you with that award. And if you get your master's in aerospace engineering, I want you to come see me.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Okay, we do have one more presentation here to make as well. And this one will honor three different gentlemen who have served our city. The first up here is our great mayor, Dick Reinierson, who has not only served the last 8 years to the city of Fort Walton Beach as its mayor, but the previous 8 years up here as a part of our Fort Walton Beach City Council. Now, for those who don't know exactly what that entails and includes, it is an unbelievable calendar, which I'm already experiencing the invitations for, which is already making me tired. So your drive and your willingness to always be there is an inspiration. Thank you for your service. And this is a lovely clock featuring a nice picture of you and your wife as well with the city's gratitude and appreciation. So thank you.
Thank you. Couldn't have done it without her.
Oh yeah, and a piece of the bridge. All of those.
And you will have your gavel too. I'll finish it tonight.
Sorry, Jenny, I didn't even see you in here.
Thank you.
I'll do it.
All right, next up we have Mr. John Mead, since he's still standing up. Come on down, John. Now, much like Mayor Reinerson, John has served the city quite a few different times. In fact, called upon here recently to fill a vacancy that we had on our council and stepped up and absolutely did a wonderful job. John's one of the smartest guys we've probably ever had on this council in the however many years we've had a council, at least as far as I've seen, and I think that holds true. John served from 23 to 25, 15 to 19, 13 to 15, and another little stint there in 2013. John, thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have this clock. It's made of real diamonds and quartz. It's very fancy.
Sure. This is the thing I'm most proud of. As a city, we've encouraged the bridge and the development of the city going forward. So I'm real proud of this. Thank y'all very much.
And Mr. Travis Smith. Mr. Travis Smith has not only served our city from 2021 to 2025, but has been an active participant in our city and in our meetings well before he was a member of this council. Can't tell you how many 1 hour plus phone calls I have enjoyed with this guy well before he was on the council, and then advocated down here in these chambers. So thank you for your service as well. There's many things that would not have been accomplished had you not been a part of this council. And thank you for always being a guy who always lets everyone know exactly where you stand.
Yeah, the only speech I have is I have absolutely no clue how you've done this for 16 years. I'm not kidding. I mean, even though I was probably more active to the extent of 6, because I felt like I was coming to all the meetings for 2 years prior to that, but it's exhausting. And 16 years I don't know. There's no way I could do 16 years straight. Obviously, I can't even do more than 4. But I appreciate it. Maybe a 2-year break and I'll come see you again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the kids are doing at that point in time. But I appreciate it. Thank you. No.
And a rock for Mr. David Schmidt as well, who's coming back to join us for 2 more years. And you just want to leave?
I'll break mine if I bring it up here.
That's fair.
Not on purpose. Thank you.
Mr. Allegretto, I think, is there one here? I think you do. This one. And Mr. Allegretto, it's been 8 years on council.
Yes, sir.
And you're about to inherit the gavel. And so I'm looking forward to your tenure as mayor, and how you're going to do great things. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes, we have you doing many things, but now can you read us the official election results from the previous election?
This is from the canvassing board that met on the Friday after the election. So the final results are, let's see, get them up on the screen as well. It'll take a minute. Brandon, they're in alphabetical order. Brandon Bishop, 445. Logan Browning, 820. Sonia Vasquez, 339. Jason Harwell, 303. Ben Merrill, 697. Debbie Riley, 878. And Travis Smith, 585. So those are the official results from the canvassing board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Appreciate it. And thank you to our new council members, and thank you to everyone who ran in public interest in filling these seats. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Now we're up to item 7 on our agenda. Chris Pizzetta, the owner of 225 Beachview Drive, has asked for 15 minutes to present his case to us. I'm asking that no comments be made during his presentation, and if you have a comment, you're going to need to hold it until we have that item on the agenda, which is item 13.6. So having said that, Mr. Pizzetta, the floor is yours, 15 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, members of City Council. My name is Chris Pizzetta, and I'm here tonight not just to speak about my personal experience, but to demand fair and equal treatment under the law. I'm a 16-year combat veteran who has served in over 70 countries as a special operations pilot. Today, I continue to serve my country in the Air Force Reserves, flying combat missions, and a commercial airline pilot operating out of VPS, safely transporting members of our very own community. In June 2020, while still on active duty, I purchased 225 Beachview Drive. The property was severely neglected and burdened with open code violations left by the previous owner. I invested over $300,000 of my own money to transform the property into a fully compliant, high-quality vacation rental, fully permitted under Florida Statute 509. Since opening my doors, I've faced relentless harassment, vandalism, over 60 false police complaints, and even physical assaults, far beyond what any vacation rental owner in this community has experienced. Yet despite this intense scrutiny, not a single citation has ever been issued against me. Every police investigation confirmed my complete compliance. My rental operates legally, exactly like the other 26 rental properties in our neighborhood. Given these facts, I must ask, why am I the only one being targeted? Tonight, I'll address the uncomfortable truth driving this harassment because it's time to fully acknowledge it openly. One of the most important reasons I chose to purchase property in this neighborhood was precisely because it does not have a homeowners association. I specifically wanted a neighborhood free of HOA restrictions on rentals, parking, and property modifications, although we still have city codes to help with this. This neighborhood was explicitly designed without HOA restrictions, and every homeowner here bought property knowing this fact. I've noticed that recently the City Council has begun to broaden its focus beyond just my property, possibly because of my consistent advocacy or simply because the facts are undeniable. But let's remember why we're here tonight. I've been repeatedly harassed, targeted, and falsely accused while maintaining full compliance with every law and regulation. While some neighbors seek to dismantle what I've built, here's what I've actually created for this community. Reunions for families separated for decades, space for church retreats, women's empowerment events and military TDYs, hosting youth sports teams, cheerleading competitions, and family gatherings. Even my own neighbors have celebrated birthdays and events at my property. I helped a Make-A-Wish kid fulfill his dying dream using a metal detector by hiding military challenge coins in our beach for him to discover. I personally assisted elderly neighbors, including picking up Mr. Morgan many times, one time after a 3 a.m. fall in the rain, and helping Miss Mary Morgan clear storm debris, acts repeatedly acknowledged by their family. Guests book my property because it's peaceful, clean, meticulously maintained, and compliant with the law. So why am I being treated as a nuisance? Let's be very clear. This situation goes far beyond false complaints. My neighbors have conducted an organized campaign of harassment, intimidation, vandalism, and even physical violence against me. Mr. Bill Lynch, Mr. David Lowe, and Mr. John Vito have collectively filed more than 60 false complaints against me. Despite their aggressive attempts, not a single citation has ever been issued. At a recent meeting, one resident openly acknowledged, quote, "If you actually read the police reports, it looks like we are the problem," end quote. And they're right. The police reports consistently identify my neighbors, not me, as the source of conflict. Mr. David Lowe staged a fake trash violation against me, incident number 2024-00109-421, dated October 27th, 2024. He stole my trash bags, hid them in his garage, then placed them back in my yard after the collection truck had come and gone. This was after he threw my trash in my yard twice, and I twice moved it back to the street. He called the police to falsely accuse me and then admitted his wrongdoing when confronted. It's documented in the police report, and I urge you to read it. Mr. Bill Lynch has repeatedly filed baseless noise complaints. Police have arrived numerous times to find no noise, no music, and absolutely no violations. Mr. Lynch has also been caught filming and harassing guests over the privacy fence, invading their privacy and intimidating them. Mr. John Vito falsely reported parking violations. On October 30th, 2024, police confirmed that every vehicle on my property was legally parked. Multiple times, police have noted that parking violations reported by other neighbors were actually committed by his own guests, not mine. This isn't a mere neighborhood disagreement. It's deliberate misuse of city resources and harassment. My neighbors haven't limited their aggressions to false police reports. They've escalated to threats, vandalism, and even physical violence against me and my guests. One day, while standing in my driveway with my family, including my 1-year-old daughter, Mr. Lynch rolled down his truck window, flipped me off, yelled "F you," and sped away aggressively. This is what I deal with: a grown man screaming profanities at a family with a baby. This behavior is not isolated. It demonstrates ongoing hostility. In November 2022, after I installed security cameras due to repeated vandalism of my pool and spa, Mr. Lynch physically assaulted me twice in one day. While I was standing on a ladder adjusting the security cameras, he told me he was going to knock me down off the ladder. Then he charged onto my property, forcing me to scramble down to avoid being injured. He chased me across my yard while I ran away from him to avoid physical confrontation, twice in one day. He was charged with 2 counts of assault and 1 count of trespassing. Shockingly, at last month's city council meeting, he blamed me for his violence, refusing responsibility for his criminal actions. This from a man in his 60s. Let's be clear. This is not about noise or vacation rentals. This is about a neighbor with documented history of violent aggression. I had a positive relationship with my neighbors. Miss Mary Morgan, who recently passed away. Over the years, I personally helped her husband, Mr. Morgan, off the ground multiple times from falls during storms, and I regularly assisted with yard cleanup. Her family thanked me repeatedly for my support. Yet during my final conversation with Mary, David Lowe aggressively confronted me, demanding that I, quote, "step outside like a man to handle it," end quote. This is a direct physical threat. This aggression came from the very same individual who staged the trash violation against me. My continued acts of kindness and compliance are met with aggression, threats, and deception. Guests' vehicles have been egged repeatedly. In August 2022, someone dumped black dye into my pool, causing thousands of dollars of damage. A police report was made, and I gave them the security footage of the event. Guests have been harassed, recorded, and deliberately disturbed. Leaf blowers and loud music have been strategically employed to disrupt weddings. Boats driven by Mr. Lowe have intentionally created noise disturbances during wedding vows. Imagine renting a beautiful waterfront property for your special day, only to have your vows disrupted by a neighbor repeatedly driving a boat back and forth, while another neighbor films over the fence, operating loud leaf blowers next to my property line, right next to your ceremony. These actions are shameful, and even more shocking because they're conducted by grown adults. This is not a disagreement about vacation rentals. It's a coordinated personal campaign of harassment and intimidation. Initially, I got along extremely well with my neighbors. Mr. Bill Lynch and I shared wine at my home, and he was excited that I was going to clean up the mess from the previous homeowner. Mr. David Lowe and Miss Lisa Courtney invited me to their family wedding at Miss Courtney's waterfront property in October of 2021. We participated together in neighborhood boat parades. Everything was peaceful until I hosted my first black family. Suddenly, attitudes changed dramatically. Neighbors started deliberately creating noise during weddings, filing excessive false noise complaints, and openly showing hostility towards the change in the guests. Miss Mary Morgan personally confided in me before she passed away, revealing that Mr. Dave Lowe ended his relationship with Miss Lisa Courtney explicitly because her daughter began dating a black man. When I expressed disbelief, Mary swore, quote, "on the Lord Jesus Christ," end quote, that it was true. I personally witnessed this double standard. Mr. Bill Lynch has handed leaf blowers to white guests and asked them to help trim his trees, which they did. After Mr. Bill Lynch assaulted me twice, Mr. David Lowe came over to Mr. Lynch's house to install multiple bright floodlights pointed directly at my house. When I refused to drop the charges, and when black guests arrived, he deliberately turned on the floodlights to blind them and played anti-immigrant podcasts loudly through speakers. When an Indian family stayed at my property, they were subjected to racist podcasts played loudly enough to be mentioned explicitly in the guest reviews. This uncomfortable truth is what nobody wants to acknowledge openly. Racism is at the heart of this sudden hostility. I now want to highlight something critically important. I've consistently gone above and beyond to ensure peace and good relations in the neighborhood. Long before my complaints emerged, I had clear and strict policies communicated to all guests. These policies demonstrated the extraordinary lengths I've gone to avoid conflict. I've printed documents here that show extensive measures I've taken. Let me briefly read excerpts from the house rules I've enforced for over 3 years. Quote, The most common reasons in order of why the neighbors call the police and how to fix it are: 1, yelling, screaming loudly, being outside in the pool spa area, fix. Whisper, move conversations inside. 2, loud music. The fix for that is to turn off the music completely when outside. This is mandatory after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m. Move your group inside. 3, congregating outside in the front yard. Neighbors do not know who is outside in groups at night. Fix, expeditiously move yourself and guests inside or to the back of the property as quickly as possible. Turn off your vehicle lights. Do not stand by your vehicles or talk at night. Do not shine your vehicle lights in the neighbor's windows. Only be out front at night to leave or throw the trash away. In my experience, the likelihood of a disturbance increases when people are out in the front yard after dark. Up to a $500 fine applies for disturbances, end quote. Additionally, here's an excerpt from the most recent guest review dated February 22nd from a guest named Daniela, explicitly mentioning how closely neighbors watched her and how extensively rules were communicated. Quote, beautiful place, great location. I received 16 different auto-generated messages for a 2-day visit. It was too much, not relaxing at all. We felt like we were visiting a monastery versus a vacation home. The house rules and checkout instructions are the longest and most expansive from any Airbnb I've ever stayed in. It was just my husband and I, and we are nearly 50. We received house rules that literally were captioned, don't get arrested. It was 3 pages explaining how their neighbors call the cops on their guests for so many things. We weren't even able to relax or enjoy ourselves. We did not have any issues, but we caught the neighbors several times watching, almost as if they could not wait to tattle on someone. It was a weird environment. Too many rules, too many threats in the rules for us. You definitely need to rethink how you present your rule book. Too long, too aggressive, and almost threatening. Nobody wants to go on a vacation and hear all about their nosy neighbors will call the cops. I have never left a bad review at Airbnb before, but I did not have a negative experience. However, if I had received your little rule book before booking, I would have never stayed. I travel twice a week for work, and I stay in Airbnbs every time. I'm pretty open and easygoing about most things, but that was way over the top for grown adults. The fact that I must enforce these strict proactive measures to protect my legally compliant business speaks volumes about who is truly causing trouble in the neighborhood. I'm not asking for special favors. I'm simply demanding fairness and equal treatment under the law. Stop the abuse of city resources. Over 60 false complaints have wasted significant taxpayer resources and law enforcement time. If I filed 60 police reports, I'd be arrested. False reports. Enforce the law equally. There are 26 other vacation rentals in the neighborhood. They are subject to the same, subject to the same intense scrutiny and harassment that I am? If the city council seeks to adjust rental regulations, changes must apply citywide, not selectively to me. All homes are not created equal. A 5,300 square foot property with parking for 27 cars cannot reasonably face the same occupancy limits of a much smaller home with no off-street parking. Using the city attorney's suggested occupancy formula of 12 overnight guests allowed for a typical 1,200 square foot home, my property would legally be allowed 52 overnight guests. My point is that arbitrary one-size-fits-all rules are neither fair nor practical. My property is fully compliant with Florida Statute 509. I've never received a single citation, and I've had 0 code violations. I have always provided and will continue to provide a safe and welcoming environment for people of all backgrounds. Protect me and my guests. Publicly recognize the unfair targeting I've endured. Ensure that the police actively prevent harassment, vandalism, and intimidation. Protect my guests and me from neighbors engaging in discriminatory and threatening behavior. I contribute substantial taxes through my business, and my guests contribute significantly to local tourism revenue, benefiting the entire city. The city cannot ethically continue to collect taxes from me and my guests while refusing to protect me from harassment. In closing, I genuinely care about this community. I want nothing more than to continue operating my business legally, safely, and peacefully. But this cannot happen unless City Council takes clear, decisive action to protect me from harassment and enforce the law fairly. Tonight, I ask the City Council to immediately stop this pattern of harassment and abuse, ensure equal enforcement of all laws, commit to protecting my guests and me from further harm. If the City Council fails to take these actions, I will have no choice but to protect my business and rights through every legal means available. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, that brings us to item 8. Consent agenda. We get a motion, Council.
Mayor, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Alfredo, second by Councilman Jeter to approve the consent agenda as presented. Further comment?
No, sir.
Council, please vote. does pass unanimously. Thank you, council. And that brings us to item 9. Mayor and council comments, and we're going to start with Councilman Schmidt.
None at this time, I'm going to save for later on in the meeting, Mr. Mayor.
All right, sir. Mr. Schmidt.
None for me, Mayor.
Mr. Walker.
I'll save it for later.
All right, Mr. Allegretto.
No, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Berry.
Yes, Mr. Burns, you have the dismissal of the complaint.
And Ms. DeBerry has asked that I read her dismissal of her ethics complaint for the record, and if there's no objections to me doing so, I'll proceed forward.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
the entire complaint?
I'm not going to read portions that could identify the complainant because I would legally advise against doing that. I don't want to create any issues for the city, but I can read the sufficient portions to identify, I think, what Ms. DeBerry wants to have.
Okay. Just curious, before you mean sufficient portions, like just what, 8 to 10 pages, right?
It's actually only a little over 3. It's
Okay.
mainly attachments.
Okay. All right, I just had a question. Thank you.
Okay, so it's styled N. Ray Gloria J. DeBerry, complaint number 24-278 for the State of Florida Commission on Ethics, and it's a public report in order dismissing complaint. On Friday, March 7, 2025, the Commission on Ethics met in executive session and considered the complaint for legal sufficiency pursuant to Commission Rule 34-5.002 FAC. The Commission's review is limited to questions of jurisdiction of the Commission and of the adequacy of the details of the complaint to allege a violation of the Code of Ethics for public officers and employees. No factual investigation preceded the review, and therefore the Commission's conclusions do not reflect on the accuracy of the allegations of the complaint. The Commission voted to dismiss the complaint for lack of legal sufficiency based on the following analysis. And there's the actual factual basis was listed. I want to skip over those portions because that could identify the complainant. But the Commission then went on to state that the Commission on Ethics has jurisdiction to investigate only those allegations that are based upon personal knowledge or information other than hearsay. And Florida statutes to require an allegation to be based upon personal knowledge or information other than hearsay to be sufficient for investigation. A majority of the allegations appear to be based on personal knowledge as they concern either the complainant's personal interactions with the respondent or incidents that occurred in the complainant's presence. However, even if the allegations in the paragraphs are considered on their merits, they do not provide a legally sufficient basis for investigation for the reasons explained below. Section 112.313, subsection 6 Florida statutes is implicated by allegations in the complaint. However, that statutory section reads, misuse of public position. No public officer, employee of an agency, or local government attorney shall corruptly use or attempt to use his or her official position or any property or resource which may be within his or her trust or perform his or official duties to secure a special privilege, benefit, or exemption for himself, herself, or others. Section 112.312, subsection 9 Florida statutes states an action is done corruptly if it is done with a wrongful intent and for the purpose of obtaining or compensating or receiving compensation for any benefit resulting from some act or omission of a public servant, which is inconsistent with the proper performance of his or her public duties. In order to indicate a possible violation of this provision, a complaint must substantively allege that a respondent corruptly used or attempted to use his or her public position or resources within his or her public trust or corruptly perform his or her official duties in order to benefit himself, herself, or another. It is not enough that they constitute only a detriment to the complainant as is alleged. The complaint substantively fails to indicate a possible violation of section 112.31 subsection 6. The allegations here fail to identify in a factual, non-conclusory manner any special private capacity benefit for the respondent or any other individual or entity with whom she had a private capacity nexus as would be needed to support the corruption requirement for a possible violation of section 112.313 subsection 6. Certain allegations, such as the staff's allegation that the respondent's repeated demands and comments have caused them to become increasingly anxious and stressed to the point that they sought medical treatment for anxiety, loss of appetite, stomach and digestive issues, and loss of sleep, may identify a detriment. However, without more, cannot form a legally sufficient basis for investigation under section 112.313 subsection 6 as explained above. We also find the allegations in paragraph 3 above cannot constitute a violation of the prohibition currently found in Article 2, Section 8, subsection H, subsection 2 of the state constitution, because even if accepted as true, they do not identify in a factual, non-conclusory manner any disproportionate benefit to the respondent's spouse, children, or employer, or any business with the respondent contracts in which she is an officer, partner, director, or proprietor, or in which she owns an interest as would be needed to constitute a violation of the constitutional prohibition. Accordingly, this complaint is hereby dismissed for failure to constitute a legally sufficient complaint with the issuance of this public report, so ordered by the State of Florida Commission on Ethics meeting in executive session on Friday, March 7th, 2025.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
Mr. Jeter.
I'll save for the answer.
All right, Mr. Beatty.
Just one thing, Mr. Burns, when we get to the referred to as the short-term rental ordinance, I'm not speaking specifically to this property, but I did hear it referenced a number of times, having weddings and those type of events. If you could enlighten the board when we get to that point on how such a wedding venue or event would interact with a short-term rental type.
Okay, and I'll do that at that point in time.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm not speaking to this one, just in general, so you can help to give us some guidance on the line that we cross with code enforcement with residential, commercial, and I know we see that in many applications and how that interacts with these type ordinances.
Okay, I will do.
And once again, not to this property, just in general. But I'll save the comments at the end.
All right, thanks, sir. I'm going to reserve my comments for the end as well. So that'll bring us to item 10, public comments. This is the time for those of you in the audience to come forward and speak on any item that is not on the agenda, and limit time to 5 minutes. So I'm opening the floor. Just identify yourself and name and address, and you're free to speak.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Kirby Locklear, 13 Windsor Lane, Kenwood. I remember sitting up there 2 years ago, and all my time when we had the citizens' comments, it was usually about something they wanted to address, a problem, or they had a grievance against a particular council member. I am not here to do that. Instead, I want to state my appreciation for the outgoing council members and the mayor for their service to our community. Mr. Mead, although I did not get to serve with you, and to be honest with you, I sort of was a Debbie fan at that particular vote, but I want to thank you for your 2 years for stepping up, because anytime anybody's sitting up there, this is a service to our community, and your service is appreciated. Travis, during my last 2 years of my term, there was a lot of votes we didn't agree on, but I wanted you to know I've always respected you. You stood by your principles, and that to me means a lot to me, and I appreciate what you've done for the city for the last 4 years. And I also remember that time before you even became on the council, when you brought those boxes of petitions, and they stood right here. But that's the type of steadfastness that I was talking about. And I appreciate everything you've done. I don't need to wish you luck because I know you make your own. Mayor Rainierson, what can I say? From serving our nation as a combat pilot on C-7s, and we just talked about Vietnam, and you did serve in Vietnam, and a B-52 pilot, to serving God, your family, your nation, and the city of Fort Walton Beach. For 16 years, you brought exceptional leadership to our city, and it was a pleasure to work with you, sir. Sir, I salute you.
Thank you, sir.
To the inbounds, Nick, Debbie, Logan, Ben, and Dave, we are counting on you to continue making Fort Walton Beach the best city in the Panhandle. Finally, I want to give my heartfelt thanks to the Parks Department. Thanks for taking away the broken bench at Garnier Beach Park. That park is my favorite. because there is no better view in all the city to see a sunrise, a moonrise over the Chattahoochee Bay. Matter of fact, there's actually a small little group of us every month that go out there and see it. So I encourage you all to do that. But most important, what that does, it increases our quality of life in our city. So thank you very much. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Locklear. Anyone else wish to speak on items not on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Brandon Bishop, 309 Briarwood Circle. I also wanted to tell y'all thank you for your service, Travis, Mayor, future Mayor, as of the 1st. So look forward to seeing what y'all do. And John, appreciate your service to our community. And look forward to the new council candidates. I would like to appreciate them. It was my second race running, and it was probably the smoothest race that I ran with them. I mean, I went to doors, knocked, and this time I didn't hear nothing about people, other candidates dogging other candidates, which was a really good sign this election season. So I appreciate y'all and looking forward to see what y'all do for the community, and look forward to what we see in the next 2 to 4 years. So appreciate y'all and y'all's service.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Anyone else? All right. Seeing none, we're going to go to item 11, resolution 11.1, 2025-1, resolution supporting the OCHIP recommendation to establish community land trust. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, supporting the Okaloosa County Health Improvement Partnerships, OCHIP, recommendation to partner with the Northwest Florida Community Land Trust to establish a community land trust in Okaloosa County and providing an effective date. Chief Page.
Mayor, thank you. I'd also like to thank you for your service, Councilman Meade, Councilman Smith, for your service to the city. This is the item that we came with a discussion item a few weeks ago. Since then, we've gone to the city of Destin, who passed a similar resolution. We went to the city of Mary Esther, who passed a similar resolution. The city of Niceville, who passed a similar resolution. The city of Crestview, who passed a similar resolution. And we were scheduled to present both in Shalimar and Cinco in the month of April. So the resolution is in front of you, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions from Council for Chief Page. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chief Page. Last time you presented, and it was in my eternal quest to understand how the clock is built. I had some questions then, and Councilman Schmidt had made a question, and it was interesting, kind of stuck with me. So since then to now, I've thought about that, and his question was, my question back then, or concern was, why is the government involved in this? I'm all in favor of the private market providing solutions to affordable housing, whether it's they buy land. And Councilman Schmidt had said that, this land trust will be out there competing with other private buyers, and that all makes sense. So in my quest, again, I have to ask, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of us as a body saying that we're in favor of it, we oppose it, we give it our blessing, passing a resolution? If we were to withhold it, I guess would probably be a helpful answer to me. If the body withheld and didn't give it this resolution, one, what would that do? And I guess the other part of the first part of the question is probably, why are they seeking our approval of a resolution?
So to the first part of your question, or I'll do your second question first. The reason we're soliciting resolutions from the district municipalities is we want to show there's support within the county for a community land trust. And whether Okaloosa County starts its own community land trust or Northwest Florida Community Land Trust, which is in Escambia County and Santa Rosa County, makes its way over to Okaloosa County, there's two options available. And for a community land trust to properly function, it needs support from all the stakeholders. So it needs supports from the nonprofits, from the private community, but also from the governmental community. Because the community land trust is going to come to the city to look for abandoned properties, derelict properties, properties that has code violations on it. And in other communities, they've worked through mitigation of code fines to make blighted properties more attractive to community land trust. The resolution that we have in front of us tonight uses the word of support, encourage, support, encourage. So there's no true obligation to the city for the land trust. It is just saying that if a land trust was to be formed and somebody was to come here, at least staff would be receptive to the land trust when they came here. And it's to encourage one of the land trusts, whether it's Northwest Florida Community Land Trust, Okaloosa County to start a land trust, or another nonprofit to form a land trust, that all the stakeholders in Okaloosa County are receptive to the idea of a community land trust. And the community land trust concept came out in the discussion that we had previously as part of the Affordable Housing Summit that was put on by the Okaloosa County Health Improvement Plan in conjunction with ECAR. And there's a representative here tonight, Emily Pickens from the Okaloosa Health Improvement Plan, and Melissa Gaza from ECAR, that are the driving forces behind this. It also allows the availability of certain state funding, such as the SHIP program and other state mechanisms that already exist, to possibly divert some of that money to a community land trust. And that's the real reason we wanted a resolution of support from the various municipalities, and the final stop will be a resolution from the county to show that all the stakeholders in Okaloosa County are at least willing to engage in the concept.
Thank you. And you and I have spoken enough personally. I know that I have a feeling you know my stance on this issue, and hearing the and I suspected that the reason it would be asking for support of the resolution would be that at some point in the future it's going to be involving a request for money. They're an established organization. And you mentioned the SHIP. That was the first time I'd heard that. I didn't know where the money was going to come into play, but back to Councilman Schmidt's suggestion and idea that it would be fair competition when it's subsidized by taxpayers' money through the state to these housing allowances. It is kind of an advantage that trust has over a private entity. A private entity to buy a derelict house, an abandoned house, the one that's foreclosed on if we sell it or whatever else. I'm just one who overwhelmingly believes that the less government is the best government, and that the more government is not, even though it's set out to say that it is going to establish affordable housing, it actually doesn't make it more affordable. It might actually make it more expensive. So that's just my personal views, economic views on state versus private entities. So me personally, I won't be supporting it, but I understand the request for it. Thank you.
Other questions from council for Chief Page? Anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council, may we get a motion?
Mayor, I move for approval of Resolution 2025-1, supporting the OCHIP recommendation to establish a community land trust.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Allegretto and seconded by Councilwoman DeBerry to approve 2025-1 and resolution supporting the recommendation to establish a community land trust. Comments?
No, sir.
Comments? Council, please vote. It does pass 5-2. Thank you, council. Moving item 12.1 to just ahead of 13.6. So that'll take us to item 12.2. 2176 is an ordinance to rezone 120 Lowry Place Southeast from CF to MX2. This is quasi-judicial.
Ordinance number 2176, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for property described as 120 Lowry Place Southeast, more particularly described in the body of the ordinance, be rezoned MX2 mixed-use high zoning district, providing for the amendment of the effective portion of the official zoning map, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. And this is a quasi-legislative hearing. Mr. Prezzetti's here to, I think, present on behalf of staff. I do believe the applicant is here. At least I saw them. They're in the back of the room. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Prezzetti.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Chris Schmidt, Growth Management Director. So this is the second reading of this ordinance to rezone 120 Lowry Place. southeast from CF to MX2. So this is a request that I received from the property owner that we were working through with staff and the property owner over the last couple of months. And so, as I previously discussed on first reading, there were a few discrepancies, some items with the dimension of the property on the survey that we worked through that took a little bit of extra time to go through this process. We have worked through some of those situations there. This property is approximately 7.5 acres in size. It was the old school board property near downtown, and with that it had a zoning of community facility. The mixed use, the future land use designation was already mixed use, and so this request to rezone it to our mixed use high MX2 is consistent with the existing future land use. So staff, we did complete our analysis and review against the land development code and comprehensive plan for consistency, and staff does find that this request for rezoning is consistent with the land development code and comprehensive plan. This item also did go to the LPA and did receive their recommendation for approval. So with that, staff does respectfully recommend the adoption of ordinance number 2176 to rezone the properties including 107 and 109 First Street Southeast, 120 Lowry Place Southeast, and 108 and 110 Second Street Southeast from community facilities to mixed use high zoning district. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions from council for Mr. Presenti? Anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Seeing none, councilman, we get a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2176 to rezone the properties addressed as shown in the staff recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Walker, seconded by Councilman Jeter to approve 2176, an ordinance to rezone 120 Lowry Place Southeast from CF to MX2. Further comments? Comments? Council, please vote. Does pass unanimously. Thank you, Council. That'll bring us to item number 13, action, direction, discussion. Item 13.1, FY22, 2023, 24 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Ms. Mallett.
Mr. Mayor, Council, it is certainly our pleasure to be here tonight to present the results of the city's September 30th, 2024 financial statement audit. Before I begin the formal presentation, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone that we have a chance to interact with at the city as it relates to the audit process, but particularly wanted to thank the finance team, Ms. Neighbors, Mr. Schumacher, really did a fantastic job, and all of the other individuals on that team on getting us the information that we need, the quality information, timely information, accurate information to discharge our responsibilities as auditors appropriately. Also have a couple members of the Warren Averett team over here. We've got Kendra Byford, she's a CPA, a supervisor. She's worked on the city's audit for a number of years. And Joel Bradley, well, there's Joel. He moved. He's a principal. Joel is an expert in governmental accounting and financial reporting. He really does the heavy lifting and supervising on the city's audit. And we're going to switch things up a bit this year, kind of crazy for auditors. But I'm going to do an outbrief of the audit results, and then Joel's going to give you a few financial highlights that we hope are of value. So our opinion on the city's financial statements was unmodified, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. And it means, in our opinion, the city's financial statements fairly represent the financial position in all material respects as of September 30th, 2024. In terms of our audit process, we've kind of walked through this before, but we're required to audit the city under generally accepted auditing standards, but there's also an additional layer. So we're required to audit the city in accordance with government auditing standards or the Yellow Book. And as it relates to that audit, there were no matters of non-compliance to bring to the attention of governance. In the past few years, especially as a result of the COVID pandemic, a lot of federal and state grant money have come to the city of Fort Walton Beach, and we've had to do either a federal or state single audit. This year, in lieu of a federal single audit, the city qualified for an alternative compliance exam, and this is just a streamlined approach to the single audit, but the city qualified because they only had one major federal program, and that was the ARPA money that was recognized in the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund that was used for water meter replacement. So we tested certain expenditures relating to that grant award, and we have no exceptions to bring to the attention of management or governance. We have, in tandem with this increased grant activity, we've had some grant recommendations, findings to bring to the attention of council over the last 2 years. And I'm happy to report that the policies, the procedures, we have nothing to report to council, which is a good thing. So there's been an investment in that grant accounting and oversight, and certainly that has paid off with respect to the caliber of information received. We do have one matter to bring to the attention of City Council. It is definitely a financial accounting matter, and it was something that was self-reported to us by city staff. So meaning the city system of internal control did detect the error. And it relates to a sale of surplus property. If you remember, in fiscal year 2023, the city sold a piece of property to Okaloosa County, the fairgrounds property, for $4.2 million. That amount was recognized as a gain in the city's financial statements in 23. And 24, city staff identified that the relating land parcel had not been disposed from the city's books and records. So again, the city detected that it needed to be removed, but it was just a mismatch of time period. It should have been removed from the city's books and records at the time it was sold, and thus the city overstated the gain that was recognized by $2.4 million. So this only impacts the governmental activities on the full accrual model of accounting, and it's not anything to do with cash received. The city received all of the cash that it should have. It's simply a timing error between the gain being recognized and the land being disposed of. So the city does not sell surplus property. It's not something that happens in the ordinary course of business, but I'm not going to tell you it doesn't happen, because it does. So our recommendation to city personnel is simply to make sure the controls as it relates to land disposals, that we're always taking into account that any land sold is being removed from the books at the same time, so the correct amount of gain is being reported in the financial statements. So hopefully that's as clear as mud. Definitely one of those technical accounting issues. But I'm going to turn it over to Joel to give a few financial highlights, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Fallon.
Slide this up. Thank you, Angela. So anyone who's ever heard me speak before knows I tend to be a little long-winded, so I'm going to stick to the script tonight because, there's time constraints here, but I could talk about this stuff all day long. I really enjoy it. So this slide here that's up now, it shows some selected 10-year financial metrics for the city, which I'll be talking about for the remainder of the presentation. Due to time constraints, I can't comment on every metric. But I wanted you to have the information, so it is in here for your perusal at your convenience. So just, I want to touch quickly on the top two metrics there. The millage rate sensitivity, that represents the property tax revenues that would be generated or lost if the millage rate were to change by 1/10 of a point. So for example, from 4.8 to 4.9, it would generate an additional $208,000 of property tax revenue. The next metric there is assessed value per capita. That is the total assessed value of taxable property within the corporate city limits divided by the population. It represents the taxable value of property per resident. Now, both of these metrics provide information on a municipality's property tax revenue capacity. And those ratios are a lot higher than a lot of the other municipalities that share a lot of similar attributes of the city of Fort Walton Beach. So now I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of the other financial metrics shown in this table in the slides that follow. This slide shows the composition of ending fund balances for the city's governmental funds. Approximately 29% of ending fund balance is assigned or unassigned and available for spending at the council's discretion. On the next slide, we'll look at some specific sources of the restrictions, commitments, and assignments of fund balance. So this table here is straight out of the city's financial statements, and it shows the composition of the governmental fund balances at year end. And for those of you who aren't aware, fund balance, you can think of it as equity for the governmental funds. It's assets less liabilities. So non-spendable fund balance is just anything that's not in a spendable form. The most common examples are prepaid items and inventory. Then you've got the next step down, which is restricted fund balance. Restrictions come from external sources, such as grantors, regulators, or lenders. The most significant source of restricted fund balance in the general fund is the discretionary sales tax proceeds, which are restricted for specific purposes approved by voters in the November 2018 referendum, most notably capital facilities and essential public safety equipment. The other restricted fund balances in the general fund are comprised of private contributions that were restricted for specified purposes by the donors. The entire fund balance of the CRA is restricted for redevelopment projects that are contemplated in the CRA's written community redevelopment plan. Restricted fund balances for the other governmental funds column are comprised of amounts restricted for enforcing the Florida Building Code, as well as law enforcement trust fund resources. So then if you step down to the next classification, you get to committed fund balance. Commitments are imposed by internal sources, so the city's own actions, either an ordinance or a resolution. Basically anything that the same formal action to create it has to be taken to rescind it. The city has 4 sources of committed fund balances at the end of fiscal year 24. If you guys will think back, you'll remember the city adopted a resolution to establish the Workforce Housing Incentive Fund a couple of years back. In spring of 2024, the council approved a plan to disperse the remaining funds to developers for 3 specific projects, but the developers had not yet met the requirements to qualify for the approved funding as of the end of the year. The next one is cemetery maintenance. The city's code of ordinance states that 20% of all proceeds from sales of cemetery lots shall be set aside to establish a permanent maintenance fund. Furthermore, all of the resources that are accumulated in the Beale Memorial Cemetery Perpetual Care Special Revenue Fund are committed for permanent maintenance of the cemetery. The city's land development code directs that fees collected from developers for removal of certain species of trees be used for the city's tree mitigation program, which is the next commitment. And the final commitment comes from a 2011 resolution which established a formal policy on fund balances. The policy commits 30% of the subsequent fiscal year's budgeted expenditures in the general fund for natural disaster recovery purposes. The next classification below committed fund balance is assigned fund balance. This is less formal than a commitment. You can essentially think of it as internal earmarking. You know, as part of the annual budget process, appropriations for encumbrances and uncompleted special projects are carried forward to the subsequent year, which creates a fund balance assignment. Additionally, the cash carried forward to cover the budgeted expenditures for the subsequent year is also reported as an assignment of fund balance. These assignments automatically expire at year end with no formal action by the city. The assignment for long-term debt has been outstanding for several years now, and that is money that's been set aside for a balloon payment due on the 2013 revenue bonds in 2028. Unassigned fund balance is everything else in the general fund that doesn't fit into one of those other categories. So typically whenever we're talking about assigned and unassigned fund balance, those are the amounts that are considered to be available for spending because there are really no strings on how they need to be spent. This slide here represents the number of months of cash and investments reported by the governmental funds for each of the last 10 fiscal years. This metric basically compares the total cash and investments to the non-capital governmental expenditures, and it essentially represents the number of months a government could continue if no additional revenues were to be received. So I'd like to point out a couple of the spikes that I'm sure you guys are wondering about, which is, the spike in FY19 is attributable to the city issuing revenue bonds for the new field office complex, which was not completed until the subsequent fiscal year. The spike in FY21 was due to the receipt of $1.9 million of ARPA grant funding, which was subsequently transferred to the utilities fund. And there was also an issuance of $1.5 million of debt for the golf course irrigation system improvements, and that project was also not completed until the subsequent year. The decrease in FY24 was attributable to a large number of ongoing construction projects that were undertaken during fiscal year 24. In addition, to these construction projects, the general fund also advanced $3.6 million to the utilities fund to cover a temporary cash deficit as a result of several ongoing water and sewer system projects, such as the meter replacement project and the Freedom Beacon Park system expansion. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but this shows the inflows and outflows of the general fund. Money in, money out, if you want to think of it that way. You know, inflows have slowly increased over the previous 5-year period as a result of increases in tax revenues, non-recurring grant awards, and earnings on cash and investments. And as illustrated on the next slide, the outflows are strongly dependent on the timing of expenditures for major capital outlay every year. So this slide shows the total governmental funds expenditures by function for each of the last 10 fiscal years. In total, the city's governmental expenditures have increased by $12.6 million over that 10-year period. As you can see in orange there, the largest source of the city's recurring expenditures each year are for public safety. This is police, this is fire, code enforcement, and building inspection services. Payroll and employee benefit costs are the single largest source of expenditures in that public safety function. The second largest source is the one in yellow there, and that is capital outlay. But this tends to fluctuate significantly from year to year more than most of the other functions based on the timing of major capital projects. For example, the spike in fiscal year 2015 is attributable to construction of the Recreation Center on Jet Drive. And the spike in fiscal year 2019 is attributable to the construction costs incurred for the field office complex. So as you can see for FY24, the city reported a relatively high amount of capital outlay for some of the major construction projects that were undertaken. These include the Cemetery Administration Building, the Fort Walton Beach Landing improvements, Phase 1 and Phase 2, and the Heritage Park and Cultural Center Museum addition. Most of these projects were still in process at the end of the year, so more costs are going to come in fiscal year 25. So this graph here shows the governmental funds non-capital expenditures per capita over the last 10 years. This ratio represents the non-capital expenditures divided by the population, so you can essentially think of it as expenditures per resident in your governmental funds. An increase in this ratio over time may indicate that the cost of providing services is exceeding a municipality's ability to pay for those services. In other words, a municipality may not be able to maintain its current service levels with its existing revenue base. Now, I will point out that disaggregating this metric into individual expenditures categories like we looked at on the previous slide, such as public safety, culture and recreation, debt service, can provide a more detailed information regarding which expenditure categories are increasing at a faster rate than the overall expenditures, and that's a good place to start for additional analysis. So this slide shows the operating profit percentage for the enterprise funds, which is just operating income divided by operating revenues. For the previous 10 years. The enterprise funds include the utilities fund, the sanitation fund, and the stormwater fund, and these are primarily funded by user fees. The unlabeled yellow line there represents the 3-year moving average trend line. And the primary thing to focus on for enterprise funds is whether or not they are self-sustaining. If enterprise funds are not self-sustaining, a municipality may have to use reserves, issue debt, or significantly increase user charges to finance its operations. The fact that the city has reported positive operating profits in the enterprise funds for each of the last 10 fiscal years provides evidence that the enterprise funds are self-sustaining and therefore fiscally healthy. We can go ahead and skip this one. All right. This slide just simply shows the city's outstanding long-term debt as of September 30th. As you can see here, that approximately 58% of that debt is in the governmental activities and 42% of it is in the enterprise funds, the business type activities. And the primary purpose of this slide is to point out that the sources of the revenues pledged to service that debt exceeded the minimum requirements required by the loan covenants by a healthy margin. So the city's pledged revenues are adequate to cover that debt. Second to last one. All right, this slide here shows the long-term debt per capita over the previous 10-year period, which is calculated by taking the city's total outstanding long-term debt and divided by the population. This is a metric that pretty much everyone can understand. The more debt per resident that a municipality has, the less flexibility it has to determine how to utilize its existing resources. As you can see from the chart, since the city issued the revenue bonds for the field office complex in 2019, it has been slowly paying down its outstanding debt without any new significant issuances of debt, which has resulted in a steady decrease in this ratio over the last 3 fiscal years, and therefore has increased the flexibility of resources in the governmental funds. This final slide just simply shows the composition of investments reported by the city's 3 pension trust funds, which held investments of approximately $116 million at the end of September 2024. The pension trust funds reported combined investment returns of approximately $20.7 million for 24, which is a 19.5% return on investment. That is all I have at this time. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions from council for
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, first off, I want to give a quick shout out to Public Works and I'm sure Finance, and a lot of team members were involved, but those 3 enterprise funds and running at that's extremely impressive from what it sounded like. ARPA funds, did we expense all those by the deadline?
All of that money was fully spent before the end of FY24. It was spent on the meter replacement project in the utilities fund, and it was more money was spent on that project than total ARPA funding.
Making sure all the ARPA money was spent. Balloon payment, you said 2028, correct? What was that balance?
The amount that's been assigned is $850,000, but the actual balloon payment is higher than that. I don't have that figure.
I think it's $3 million. Yeah, I think it's $3.2 million.
Okay. And then last question, you mentioned, how long has that housing money been there through, I think, is it resolution through ordinance?
It's May 2022, I believe.
May of 2022. And you mentioned, unless if I heard it wrong, something about some applicants not qualifying by the end of the year?
If memory serves me correctly, they just hadn't gone far enough into the project to actually meet the requirements to get that money that had been set aside for them.
So not that they're not going to qualify, they just hadn't qualified as of September 30th, 2024.
May 2022, you're right.
Another question, follow-up question if I can, Mr. Mayor. As we approach, and I guess this is more directed to you, Mayor, and however you want to facilitate it out, Mr. Reeves or Attorney, as we approach the budget cycle, different ways that we're having to legislate and things like that we're watching very closely. Not right now, we might not have the position, but maybe in future meeting down the road, if we can get what we are legally able to do through the budget process with that housing money. This is kind of the question. We might not know it right now, but been out there for a period. We got a lot of priorities, just like every other stakeholder does. There is a huge housing concern that we all can agree on, but just want to better make sure we're best using this money that's been out there since May 22. So thank you, sir.
Guys, just a clarification.
Yes, please.
Are you going to want that breakdown based upon what's actually been awarded by council versus what we would deem probably the applicants have done enough to probably qualify for?
Yeah.
Right now, there's only one project.
Yeah, what we've already committed to, you know, and seeing what we've committed to. What we haven't committed to, where things aren't being, not qualifying by the end of the year, and We heard from a recent applicant, unfortunate situations at their local church and trying to find some pastoral administration things that are hardships that are very, I'm sure the organization's trying to figure all those things out. We're trying to figure out what we need to do with this housing money. I'd just like to know what we can do legally through this budget process. And the money that we haven't committed to through resolution or anything else.
And I guess we'll try to figure out what you have and have not committed to the resolution, and then give you an opinion as to whether or not it's best, basically.
Yeah, what we can or can't do with it during the budget process.
Other questions? Mr. Walker?
Sure. Thank you for all the work you guys have put into it, and staff. I don't know how many were involved with it, but I'm sure you guys were in here getting a lot of input from them, so thank you for all of that work. Just a couple of questions. I like that I'm going to focus on the 10-year trend. I'm just staying on that. I know that all of it's probably broken down below in the others, but I'm just going to take a couple, just see if you can articulate an answer to a couple of them. I want to see how it is that it happened. For example, the first one would be governmental funds, cash and investments. I see in 2024 that number is $39,400,000 and some change. And what caught my eye about it, what I'm looking to learn, is that back in I can see 16, 17, 15 is a little bit, but it went from 16 million to 39 million. So what would you simply say would be the cause of that? Just return on investment?
There have been significant return on investment. For example, this year, the city in its operations had almost a $5 million return on investment. But the COVID funds, I'm sorry, sorry, Kim. Some of this grant activity and funding that has become available to governmental entities, as well as the house-cent sales tax plays into that, house-cent sales tax collections. All of that, certainly plays into the increase in cash balances.
So cash balance and investments there, and that's kind of...
We use them interchangeably because the city has a very sophisticated investment structure and an investment manager that helps the city make decisions about the length of investments and all of those things to support what's needed for cash flow versus what is surplus and greater interest earnings can be achieved.
In this breakdown below, and if not, maybe you could get it, I can get it from you later, but would there be a breakdown where I could see how much is in investments and how much is in cash in that one? In that particular one, cash and investments, I don't know if there's 5 million in investments versus 35, and I don't think the ratio's that crazy. No, it's no biggie. I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
And they're separately stated in the actual financial statements
Okay.
themselves.
Perfect.
But that's something we could.
No, that's fine. I can look for that. And then I think the other one that kind of stood out was the governmental funds total fund balance. Caught my eye going from 14 million to 43 million in that 10-year period. What would you say was the cause of that governmental funds total fund balance? Going from 14 million to 43 million.
Again, I want to be careful to not being too generic, but we see this across the board in all of the municipalities and counties that we have the opportunity to audit. And I think you've got a number of factors that play into there. Certainly, we came out of the housing recession, and that was a period of strife for, all of us, but to include governments. And then there's just been a lot of assessed values have gone up, significantly over that time frame. We, again, the governments in general saw a lot of benefit from COVID. We've had things like half-cent sales tax. Obviously, expenses have gone up at the same time, so even though fund balance is higher, so are the city's expenditures over that same time frame.
Well, that's a great lead into, I think, my last question on these enterprise funds, operating revenues and expenses. I see that there's, so that combines all enterprise funds under one, and is it fair to say, generally speaking, that if one enterprise fund operating revenues were to be down and another one was up, here they would, it's an average.
In this presentation, they're combined. Again, in the audited financial statements, they're presented separately.
We can see them separately.
You can see them separately. So this year, water and sewer had operating profit, sanitation had operating profit, but stormwater actually had a small operating loss.
Gotcha.
So in the actual audited financial statements and in the city's books and records, they are tracked separately. But for the purposes of this presentation, they were just combined to give a high-level overview.
So those two previous categories or expenses that I looked at, you've gone from 14 million to 39 and 14 to 30, whatever that number was. And then I came down and looked at the enterprise funds operating revenues and expenses. And I'm not going to say they're flat, but they're pretty flat. So that, in my mind, you mentioned cost of things going up.
The enterprise funds are a little bit harder to look at on the expense side than your governmental, because the enterprise funds report on a full accrual model of accounting. So in those numbers and those expenses are the adjustments from the OPEB, which is basically the health insurance, because again, under these GASB rules, there is the concept of an implicit rate subsidy. So we're recognizing expense. It's not being expense, it's being paid out, but there's expense being accrued in the financial statements to represent what you might have to pay in the future for health insurance premiums. And then you also have any adjustments, which really in the enterprise fund should be nominal from the pensions. But since the general employees pension plan is closed, most of that adjustment, the remaining plans are police and fire, and that's all a governmental type activity. But there's depreciation in the enterprise funds, which again is trying to represent the amortization of your capital investment over time. So it's a little bit harder to look at those expenses because they might not be cash outlays, versus the governmental fund model. It's a really better true depiction of cash that has gone out the door.
And just to follow up on what Angela said, it's important to point out that operating income for the enterprise funds doesn't include interest income, investment earnings. It does not include impact fees that are collected. Just for FY24, the enterprise funds earned over $1.1 million on cash and investments. So that's not included in that ratio, but obviously is utilized in those funds.
Where is that shown? Is that up in?
It's in the financial statements.
But that's not accounted for on this trend. Is it in the governmental funds investments, cash and investments? Is that 1.1 showing up there on that trend?
Joel was referencing operating income. So in an enterprise fund, interest earnings is non-operating. So it's in the fund. It's just in the slide in the presentation, he was only analyzing operating income. So there's a second component, which is your non-operating revenues and expenses. And then there's like a third component, which is capital contributions and grants.
Okay.
So, but just looking at true operating profit, which is really where you're supposed to be theoretically over time, that you're charging more for your services, that you're not operating a deficit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from council for either Angela or Joel? Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, real quick. Do you have that number, Joel, on what has been awarded to the applicants from that housing fund?
All of it.
All of it's been awarded?
Yeah, I want to say that, you're testing my memory here, but I want to say that whenever the resolution was passed in spring of 2024, there were 2 small development projects that I want to say $75,000 per unit was allocated, and then all the rest went to the Fort Walton Beach Housing Authority for one. I want to say the Charlie Hill Terrace project. But I know that the plan was that all of that money would be gone once those projects were completed.
But we don't know what we've assigned or committed to. But what I'm hearing you say is all of it?
Well, the 1.5 million was initially established, and then one development was paid about $125,000, and the remainder that was there was allocated to 3 specific projects, assuming they met the qualifications and followed all the other rules of the Workforce Housing Incentive Fund, and then that was basically going to make the fund go away.
So that's where we're at. The applicants have been, gotcha. Okay, I'm tracking. Thank you.
And y'all actually voted to disperse that money, like you said, in spring of 2024, but there's still a process each one of those applicants has to go through to actually qualify for the money. Y'all kind of earmarked certain percentages. The Housing Authority, they're actually going to be coming back before y'all on April 8th.
Good,
They basically are ready to bring in for a landing, but I'm not sure where the other two currently are.
Good. Okay. And then maybe that's it. Maybe just knowing what is the inline, or what is our deadline. If I remember correctly, I don't think we really did any kind of airtight period of performance for that money to be
Mr.
spent.
Pizzetti even know the answer to that. He's shaking his head no.
But yeah, anyways, yeah. Just curious on what has not been, or if they have to go through this process starting in the spring 2024, giving them time, of course, to go through the process, but what that inline is that we can look for. Thank you.
Other questions from council for either one? Anyone from the public wish to comment? Seeing none. Council, we need a motion to approve the comprehensive financial report.
So moved. Second.
And moved by Councilman Meade and seconded by Councilman Allegretto to accept the FY 2023-24 annual comprehensive financial report. Any comment?
Ms. Ballin, thanks for another great audit.
Well, I wanted to thank all of you that have served and are stepping away from, as a citizen of Fort Walton Beach as well. So thank you to all of you. We appreciate your service to our community.
Thank you. Council, please vote. Does pass unanimously. Thank you, Council. Brings us to item 13.2, amendment number 1 on the lease agreement, 41 West Audrey Drive Southwest, M3 strength and conditioning.
And I guess I was asked earlier to present this just on behalf of staff because I prepared the agenda memorandum report, but Mr. Reeves was heavily involved in it. He wants to take over.
Right. Okay. I can do it. Mayor and Council, this is just kind of a housekeeping issue with this particular lease. We've got two tenants on this particular property, as you guys are familiar with. It's the old tennis center. One of the lease spells out the USTA, I believe, occupies part of the building. The other half is occupied by the M3 Fitness people. M3 Fitness, as you know, we've dealt with that on several council meetings moving forward. They're at the phase where they'd like to begin their construction, and they've had some roofing issues. They reached out to us to take a look at that, and Public Works, Mr. Payne went over and took a look at it. And we're assessing that now as to how we're going to address that in the future. But the main reason why you have it here before you tonight is we need I guess a modification to the lease, just a quick amendment to it we take responsibility for that roof as a whole for both of the tenants. And that's what we're asking for tonight is a motion that will approve this amendment, just so that it clarifies that the city is responsible for this commercial lease tenant's roof. So, and
kind of building on that, the USTA's current lease puts the responsibility for repairing the roof on the city. M3's lease was a little bit ambiguous, and actually in some language you could argue, probably be litigated over type of argument that maybe they were responsible for it. And because of that, I think Dennis and I agreed, probably at least we recommend y'all to treat both tenants the same way and just add a provision in there that makes it clear that the other tenant, M3, also is not responsible for roof repairs or replacement.
Thank you, sir. Questions from council for either Mr. Reeves or Mr. Burns?
Yes. Do we know what USTA is paying rent? Do you know their amount?
Review their lease on all of this.
Okay. I deal with leases some, and and I wasn't here back in the day when these came together. So some of you guys that have been here, fill me in on this, but just guessing and looking at the history of it all, looks like it was in really bad shape when USTA came in and for M3. I heard it from M3 for sure, and I think that USTA might have done some improvements as well, but it seems to be that the council maybe said, look, that's not a building we're going to invest in. If you guys want to have it, you can have it cheap and have at it. And Now, here we are extending a lease, which we've already done. No, we haven't, it's a part of this, but out to 2041, that was voted on, that's in the books, that's okay. But now here we are with a new roof, and with 2041, that is, $40,000 for 2 roofs. I'm just guessing.
Or more.
Or more, for sure.
You're exactly right, Mr. Orkel. One of the things that Mr. Burns and I spoke about and staff has talked about is, my experience has been a bad city practice is that a lot of times these tenants come before this council, and some of us have been here, most of us have not, and they've requested things from this city, and in order to fill up the property, they've given them a favorable rate rent. And I think in doing that, they've mitigated, not mitigated might not be the right word, they've not addressed properly what it's going to take to care for these old structures. And things have gotten to be, as you know, in your own businesses, so expensive to maintain that I don't think that oftentimes when we're helping out a nonprofit or something to that effect, you pass some things in your consent agenda for the Lutheran services. They are responsible 100% for that facility, everything. That might be a practice and a policy that as this board moves forward, that when they come with they want favorable terms for a lease agreement, well, we'll do it, but what happens. Air conditioning equipment is extremely expensive anymore, as you all know. Maintaining it is even more expensive in some states. These roofs are going to be expensive, but we're kind of going to address that now. We talked about the staff meeting, we're not really ready to get into that. We think we may make some repairs temporarily, but it's going to fall onto the city. I just think it's a policy and a practice that you should be aware of, those of you that serve and move forward. Hopefully my successor will be cognizant of that when he makes these leases. Predecessors have not. I think we've got a lot of properties out there that we lease to nonprofits and people that are using it in a good way, but we do make a commitment back a lot of times, and it falls on you guys.
And I've got a follow-up, a couple of follow-ups there, so it just made me think. So I know back when we were doing an insurance policy review citywide, we were going to look at self-insuring some buildings, and that one's a little tiny building. Do you know if that one is covered or uncovered under the blanket policy?
I'm not sure. Derek is out. He handles that risk type policies.
That's kind of question one, and the other one with.
Are you saying the roof repair? The roof repairs would never be. Yeah, you're talking about
if we're covered by insurance so look, if we put this lease on us, the taxpayers, and it's either uninsured, we self-insure because that's a smart thing to do because it saves us on the overall, but windstorm, hurricane, windstorm, we got 6 roofs by 2041.
Well, I think this roof, though, has not been damaged. I think it's just extended life.
I'm just saying in the future, and that's what I think where I was going in the lease portion of it was working in some residential and commercial leases myself. What if it becomes, what does the lease speak to on uninhabitable? It's damaged to the point of it not only takes the roof off, but there was an electrical fire in it and 2 of the walls were blown out. Where are we at? What does the lease say to those items? Uninhabitable is it's a decision on council says we're not going to rebuild them, and the leasee says you got to. We go, oh, hold on a second. So do we know the status of that?
I'll find that for you real quick.
I think this roof is just old.
There's a provision in here if the building cannot be rebuilt within 90 days of a force majeure event. I'm summarizing what it says.
Sure.
Then the lease basically is be terminated by either party.
So. Do we have that in the package? What page are you on? I just like to look at it.
336.
336. I think that's all I've got right now. Let me look at that real quick. Anybody else?
Other questions from council?
I do have one point of clarification, just to build on what Dennis did state. They actually have not signed the agreement that y'all approved, or the addendum that y'all approved back in January yet. They didn't want to sign it before this issue got resolved. So what we've brought back before you is a amended addendum 1 that will go to them, placing the roof repair burden on the city. So if y'all did decide not to pass it tonight, then I think that would effectively be kind of rejecting the 5 years that you had granted before already. So y'all have not locked yourselves in there actually requiring them to be out, or them being allowed to be out there a longer period of time if you do project tonight.
Any other questions from council? Anyone from the public wish to comment on this? Seeing none, council, may we get a motion?
Mayor, I move for authorization for you, the mayor, to execute amendment number 1 to the lease agreement with M3 Strength and Conditioning, extending the lease for 10 years through September 30th, 2041 for their portion of the City of Fort Walton Beach Tennis Center building located at 41 West Audrey Drive Northwest.
Second.
I do have one last thing to add, because I remember it was part of the call, and I found out with Daniel. So Daniel, I believe, you said that it would be somewhere between $20,000 to $80,000, was that the range to fix the roof there? He only had time to go out there in the last day or two to look at it, kind of cursory. And so if you do pass this tonight, just to be aware that the city basically will be responsible at that point in time. And but the next city manager will have to come back before you to get a actual permission if it exceeds $50,000. But at that point in time, the city's kind of locked themselves in anyway. And so just be aware.
Thank you, sir. All right, it's been moved by Councilman Allegretto, seconded by Councilman Meade, to amend number 1 to amend the lease agreement for 41 West Audrey Drive Northwest, M3 Strength and Conditioning. You said for a 10-year lease.
Yes, sir.
Any further comments? Mr. Meade?
Mr. Walker had a question, and I'm going to answer it to the best of my abilities.
good, yeah.
Going from my recollection from a long time ago, which is probably not a safe thing to do, but it's my recollection that we operated the tennis facility, and it was a big expense to the city, a lot of maintenance, a lot of repair. And I also recall that we may have gone through a number of tenants over there that didn't necessarily work out. And so I know that we like to get a fair market value for property that we rent, but it's my recollection that on the U.S. Tennis Association side, I'm not saying it right, but that perhaps if they don't have some absolute market rent, that perhaps the rent that we established provided that it was something that they could afford, but that a service that they could provide to the public, because it is a platted park, and it is a park, and it is a tennis facility, but they could provide that service at a lower cost than our Parks and Rec department could provide. So, you know, when looking at it in the future, that's my recollection of why they're there, is they were able to, as a private entity or maybe a corporation, but nonetheless, they were able to operate it more efficiently than we were, in short. So that may be when you're looking at the lease, you know, kind of trying to figure out why are we doing, or why did we do? I believe that's why it's there, is because they were willing to try it, what we weren't doing, and they seem to be succeeding.
Sure, and I don't have the privilege of being back then, so I appreciate that input there to learn that a private entity is doing it less than what Parks and Recs could do it, but also too in establishing fair market rent of a property, a building, or whatever else. The terms of the lease are important consideration. And it's like, hey, look, you guys have got the roof, you got the repairs, you got the air conditioner, you can have it for cheap. Oh, you want us to do that? You want taxpayers to do that? Okay, your rent's gonna have to be, it's just a, you know, it's a normal course of events there. So I just didn't know whether the lease being offered at a favorable rate, I don't know what it was, $400 a month, I think that M3 started out at is anyway, and now they're up to 8 something, so that sounds more reasonable, but now we're taking on the cost of a roof that was not considered before, and again, I don't know if it's covered by insurance. If it's, you know, if it's not covered by insurance and it's going to come out of general funds to put a new $30,000 roof on there, 3 times. I mean, we've had years, we don't have 3 hurricanes back to back to take that roof off, and taxpayers are on the hook for 3. I mean, what size square footage are we talking here on this building?
I forget exactly what the footprint is, but it.
Is it a $20,000? Is it a $20,000 roof, or is it a $50,000?
I could see it being more than that. Okay. I mean, it's a flat roof that is got a 10 to 15 year lifespan. It's probably getting close to the end of that, I would guess, at the least. Mr. Meade had a great point, was that it's not, a lot of times these people do bring some value with them to the city, who's ever utilizing it, as the USTA has done, as M3 probably does. My cautionary side of it is that these buildings are expensive. Even a good deal could help us to offset those costs. An empty building is worse than one that's got a low-paying rent, I think. It's still, we don't want them empty if we can help it, because they just deteriorate. So, this is, again, your decision. It's a good-sized facility. You gotta face it, we got two tenants in there. I'm not sure exactly what square footage.
So we're up for modifying the lease, and I'm saying, and just right now, now's the time if there's any other modifications that would be appropriate. And most commercial leases, now, one, they don't pay property. They don't pay property taxes on these leases, correct?
Well, not on the land, they don't.
Right, so they don't pay property taxes there. And then, a lot of commercial rentals have CAMs of sorts, a common area maintenance, a reserve fund, but they're not a part of either one of these. USTA is, I don't know, they don't have any reserve setbacks for that.
I don't know any details on that lease.
So, I think what you were saying is previous managers and or staff, whatever it is, those weren't part of the consideration. They should be part of our consideration going forward for good lease management of the buildings and stuff. So let's put those, I don't know how quickly, if we've got time to, I know there's a motion, and is there a second, is that correct? Okay. So, yeah, I'd love to see it maybe kicked down or kicked around to maybe go back to the parties and talk about these reserves, find out if it's insured and not insured.
Well, I think this lease we've pushed this several times. I think this is kind of a secondary thing. He came back to us and said, hey, I do have this lease. I'm about to make these expensive improvements that are going to be important to me. I don't want them damaged by some of the leaking that we've had in the building. And then we realized, well, how long has the roof been? And we're just now starting to address that. So it is going to come before you in the next several meetings that we're going to need to allocate some money, which we have. I think they're going to work on where it's going to come from, but it's one of those things that nobody wants to do, but it's something that right now we're faced with. Mine was more cautionary as we move forward with other leases, as you guys will see, and that other administrations will negotiate and talk about, even if they're bringing something very of value that we really want with the city. If we're on the hook for large items, it's something that I think we need to be cautious of moving forward.
Mr. Alvarado.
I certainly appreciate Mr. Reeves' advice and can understand that. I have seen during 8 years when we have entered into deals where that was not factored in correctly. And I think it is a good cautionary tale for leases going forward. For this property, however, because they do share the building with another tenant who is under the same roof, which is the roof that we're talking about replacing, and that tenant's agreement does contain the clause in the lease that we will take care of their roof. Correct? Correct. And this is we're only just adding this in just to say, hey, I know it kind of says that, but they were concerned that they're going to invest a lot of money into this property, blah, 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 extend the lease, all of that. So what we're doing here is just codifying the agreement to say, we'll take care of the roof.
Right.
But in future, we should watch out for roofs.
That's right.
So that's why I made the motion. That's why I support it, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other comments? Council, please vote. And it does pass 6-1. Thank you very much, Council. That'll bring us to item 13.3, amendment number 1 to the Emerald Coast Clubhouse, LLC, doing business as Clubhouse Grill, leased to the Golf Course Clubhouse Restaurant.
So Mayor, this is me again. This is kind of an emergency stopgap, that being that we are under somewhat construction. We've got half of our golf course closed at the current time. This is really more of, I know this council has been very understanding and try to be supportive of small business, as many of us are. I saw a little bit of an issue out there with our tenant was being exposed to having half of our golf course closed down for an improvement that they really had no control over. We just decided, hey, we're going to close down half of it, which is basically half of our people coming and using their facilities. And what I didn't want to have them see was an undue hardship. And went out there one day to meet with Mr. Smith. We were just having lunch and we casually talked with him, and I kind of started to think about it, and I thought it would be very helpful for them, and I didn't want them to be impacted greatly financially by our improving our golf course and closing down half of it. So that's why you have this before you. This is It's not a tremendous amount of money. I kind of thought we might get it on the consent agenda, but I thought you guys might have questions for me. It's about an $8,300 item, so I guess I could have somehow figured out a different way to not waste your time tonight. But what it was it's kind of almost like an emergency thing. I don't know if it's emergency. It is going to begin April 1st. It'll only carry for the 6-month period that we will be down and out of action out there for half the course. Hopefully it will help them. They've done a good job for us thus far. We want to keep them healthy because they're good for the city. So that's why you have it before you. And any questions, I'd be glad to do the best I can. We have worked on the lease a little bit though while we were at it. We did realize that we needed to we had not been updating the lease like we maybe should. So this will, when they get back online, it will come with, it'll bring the lease up to speed a little bit. So in doing that, you'll see that before you as well. Any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
Sir, questions from council for Mr. Reeves?
Mr. Ward?
Sure. Just maybe one or two, but I was surprised how recent the agreement was. I think it was 21. There it was, yeah, on August 20. Who operated concessions or food services there prior to 21?
Oh, Mr. T.
But it was still by a contract.
Yes.
I mean, he wasn't a government employee.
No, he had his own operation.
Gotcha, that's right. Mr. T was there running that. Okay. No, I think it's very fair. Thank you for, if I was that guy and my business was about to be cut in half, I'd be calling it an emergency too. Thank you.
I appreciate your consideration.
Well, I just appreciate you and the tenant identifying these needs.
Of course, the tenant's here. So.
Of course, yeah.
And I would be asking if our pro shop area up in the front was going to be, impacted by it as well. I just think we need to look out for people on our properties if we're going to make something that's beyond their control.
And that's all I was getting ready to compliment Dennis.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, man.
Any other
You're with me anyway, but
That's
yeah.
all I was getting ready to do. You finished it, man.
I was going to say, what, pro shop?
Any other questions from council? Mr. Jeter?
I certainly support it too. It's very nice of you to know some things like this on your own.
Thank you, Mr.
I know Jacob's here too. Are we good with the September 30th, 2025? Only because, like we're talking about all these other leases and everything, do we have to come back and do cleanup 6 months from now? What if it's not open until October or November? You feel good with that date?
Well, yeah, pretty good because we have, the guys who are putting in those greens are pretty professional, and the greens actually will look playable in the summer.
Yeah.
The problem is they're still growing in, so they're going to take some time. But yeah, I think they'll be ready for
And
play.
I just know we had another
We'll be-
project here too that's kind of, we were confused about, did we put a deadline on it?
Oh,
or
no,
not?
I think we're fine with it, yeah.
So we don't need to put just
September the 1st, if
before
it
it's
does,
back
we could
open.
come back, but I think we're fine for the 6-month period, yeah.
Any other questions from council?
Just a good excuse to say thanks for what you're doing at the golf course. Lots of great words, so thank you.
Anyone from the public wish to comment on this?
The restaurant or the golf course, or both? Both. I'm gonna say thank you to the restaurant too, because when I eat there, it is always very good. So thank you to both the golf course and the restaurant.
All right, council, may we get a motion?
I make a motion to authorize to execute the lease amendment number 1 to Emerald Coast Clubhouse LLC, Clubhouse Grill, to provide a reduced rent for 6-month term due to reduced capacity of the golf course during temporary construction and maintenance activities at a monthly rent reduction of $1,861.73 from April 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2025.
Second.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
And moved by Councilman Jeter, seconded by Councilwoman DeBerry to amend Emerald Coast Clubhouse LLC doing business as Clubhouse Grill, their lease for the golf course clubhouse restaurant for a period of 6 months. Further comment?
Mr. Mayor, real quick further comment. Again, thank you, Dennis and staff, as well as tenant, working out the win-win situation. Whether it's future administrations or Dennis during your time, tenant, y'all do an amazing job over there. I know we have other square footage you mentioned and things like that. Continuing to identify those different areas, whether it's our current tenant, well, I don't know what their business model is or what their interests are, or other tenants, and I think that's what you were mentioning a little while ago, Dennis, but again, thank you all for putting this together.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
I want to thank you, Jacob. I went out there and met with you and had a great conversation with you, and I'm excited about the potential in our golf course for multiple reasons. One of the big reasons is going in and having lunch. I can't remember when I did that, maybe about 4 months ago. While I was walking out, I got a chance to talk to Jim and kind of check on him and see how he's doing, and he had kind of voiced a couple of concerns to me while I was there, and you know, doing what we can to make sure that we support these tenants and help them be successful. Whether it's, hey, we're cutting the golf course in half, we'll cut the rent in half for 6 months while that's going on, or you know, making sure that these golfers are not bringing their own coolers out because, you know, the restaurant, a big portion of the money that they make is going to be through their beverage sales, and supporting them that way. I'm excited to see the change because I think that's going to happen, and I think that, you know, you being in there and helping getting that thing run up, paired with them, helping them on their rent here, and you know, I expect that by the time this golf course greens are done, your rounds are going to continue to go through the roof. They can, I mean, I'm really excited for the golf course and for everything that you guys got going on in there. Great leadership, great restaurant, and Dennis, I appreciate you going over there and talking to them. It's one of the most important things that I have learned in doing anything is get out of your office, go and meet with your department heads, meet with your tenants and stuff like that. You'll find problems that you can fix before they snowball into giant problems. So I appreciate the teamwork all the way around, and like I said, I'm really excited for what's going on out there, and I think, you know, Jacob is definitely a big part of that.
Mr. Walker.
I haven't been out there in a while, but thank you for that. I will get out there and take a look at it. And like the accountant that was here speaking, leases are my love. I can talk about leases all the time, so I really enjoy discussing these. And I really, you know, it's interesting to think about the private and public partnership. And I'm looking, whether it's the King Villages landscaping and golf construction, you know, when it makes financial sense, this body chooses to work with private individuals instead of having our own greens replacement teams and, you know, the staff to do that. We know that third parties can provide it, whether it's in the food services or in the reconstruction of this. And just thinking here too, because, you know, all the times we've talked about leases and me putting together commercial leases every now and then, there's what a benefit to the tenants who rent city properties, because they don't have property taxes that are typically passed on to the tenant, and they don't have their share of renters of insurance. They don't have that portion of the lease. So while, you know, they may be getting it at a good rate, they're getting it at a great rate, oftentimes without taxes and insurance being added on top of it, because commercial tenants typically get that. So I love it. I love to see it. I love to talk about it. And thank you for stepping in there, Dennis, for sure.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from council? Council, please vote. That's passed unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate it.
Thank you, council. Item 13.4, request for major development order for Beast Code at Freedom Tech Center at 690 Liberty Lane Northwest. Mr. Presetti.
Thank you. So, as I'm sure you've seen over the last couple of years, we've had a few different phases come through already to date, and more to come, I'm sure, for the project. We do have the applicants here this evening, developer here this evening. So this next phase of this major development order of this process is for 690 Liberty Lane Northwest, and it's a two-story, 36,000 square foot commercial building on the property there. So the reason that this is a major development order in front of you all, City Council, is because this project is developed as part of a planned unit development, a PUD. And in our land development code, one of the requirements is if you're developing in a PUD, you come through a major development order. So to get here, over the last couple of months, our development review team in the city has, we received the application, and over the last couple of months went back and forth reviewing the application, getting some corrections needed as necessary, and getting right to this point here that staff has completed our review of this project and feels that it does meet all of the requirements in the land development code, as well as all of the requirements in the executed plan unit development for this project, for this development as a whole. And so with that, we've gone through all of our processes. I did want to note just two small conditions that we do have on development order that are pretty standard, but just to note is that the first is that if this is approved, next step would be for building permit application submittals, and that all permit application submittals must be designed and prepared in accordance with the latest editions of the Florida building codes that are in effect at the time of the submission for those permits, and also that the official address for the proposed development is 690 Liberty Lane Northwest. As I said, with that, staff does respectfully recommend the City Council authorization for the mayor to execute the major development order for the construction of a two-story, 36,000 square foot headquarters building for Beast Code at Freedom Tech Center, 690 Liberty Lane Northwest, in accordance with the specified conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions from council for Mr. Paccetti? Go ahead, Mr. Allegretto.
Building meets all the perimeters, everything checks
yep.
out. We're not issuing any kind of special anything here. Everything's
It does. Yeah, you know, one of the things to note, some that maybe on council recall, within the PUD, there was the PUD had a special approval for a tree removal, in that they could remove all the trees in accordance with their lease with the Air Force. Without having to mitigate the inch per inch. So for any protected trees, that just doesn't count. So this is in compliance with the land development code. However, to note, all new landscaping that's submitted here does meet our land development code, along with everything else, stormwater setbacks. They put sidewalks in it. It's good.
I guess just to remind the public again, that this property was not initially in the city. It was owned by the Air Force.
Yes,
Correct. So
this was initially, so this is a property owned by the Air Force, still is, it's under a long-term lease. As part of those terms with the developer, there were some terms that the Air Force maintained the right to all the timber, all of those trees on the land. So within the plan unit development that was approved by council a few years ago, it basically carved out that exception, is that, you know, it wasn't the developer's even choice whether or not that timber could stay or go. However, they have, every phase that's come through has met the land development code for all new tree plantings, all new landscaping, and really gone above and beyond in most cases. So,
thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other? Mr. Mead?
And for the public's benefit, the developer voluntarily annexed into the city. This wasn't originally in the city, was it?
correct. Yes, that was a voluntary annexation at his choosing.
What is Beast Code?
It's a very large employer currently located in the
It sounds
Commerce and
like
Technology Park
Sounds like a cool project.
in our city.
Well, I'm very excited about tonight because Beast Code is a very exciting.
Mr. Odom, can you introduce yourself?
Mr. Odom, please.
Jay Odom, I'm the developer at Freedom Tech. Now, Beast Code is a homegrown business. The young men that started it and operated are from Fort Walton Beach. And I'll tell you a little bit about it, but I'm really excited because they've got over 200 employees that currently are in the city of Mary Esther. And so they're in rented space. They'll be moving to their new world headquarters here, and very excited about that. This is a picture of Freedom Tech Center, and this is Lewis Turner, the Home 2 Suites, Holiday Inn Express, and Beast Code will be across the park on this side. Maybe a little easier to see on this flat drawing, but got Lewis Turner up here. We'll have restaurants, the Home 2, the Express, Beast Code will be here. We're in discussions, or further discussions, to build a large daycare center here. And then we're in discussions to do another build-to-suit for another big employer to be here. These are the apartments. So again, we are ready to start construction the minute we get this in the building permit. This is a rendering of a building, 36,000 square feet, two-story. They're a very high-tech company. What they do, and it was developed by these young men that are there. They were in the video game business. They've developed video games, and they had the foresight to translate that technology into building in cyberspace. Their biggest customer is the Navy. And so they can take in cyberspace, if the Navy is building a new ship, They can design the entire ship, every nut, bolt, screw, the engines, the kitchen, the back, the navigation, everything in cyberspace. The wiring, the plumbing, everything. And then if the crew is going to be 800 people, those 800 people can be situated anywhere in the world, and they can put on a headset, and they're all inside that ship, and they can train. And they can drive the ship, they can cook food, they can rebuild the engines, they can navigate, they can shoot people, they can get shot, they can be in a carrier group, training. It's unbelievable what they've done. Last year they signed a $500 million contract with the Navy. Now that Trump's announced there's going to be a new shipbuilding push. Their business, 5 years ago they had 80 employees, now they have 230 something, and they need more. But they're engineers, software coders, high-paying jobs, so we're super excited to be building their world headquarters here where they grew up and started this incredible company. But, happy to answer any other questions, but we're geared up to go. The plans are finished. The minute we get a building permit, we'll be under construction, and our target date is to put them in the building by September of next year.
Thank you, Mr. Odom. Any questions from council for Mr. Odom? Anyone from the public wish to comment?
Curry Locklear, 13 Windsor Lane, great neighborhood in Kingwood. I'm going to also be addressing Mr. Odom. As a resident of the north side of the city, I am so excited to see this business opportunity. I actually know several employees, and one of them is a relative that works there. It is a great company. And one of the things I remember when I was here before was this, even making Fort Walton be sort of like a mini tech center with some of the other businesses. So I encourage you wholeheartedly to support this effort. And Mr. Odom, I'm excited about what's happening over there. We actually go out to the greens and the activities you have over there. We're looking for the restaurants and all that. So
Some are coming.
Good things are happening on the north end of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locklear. Anyone else wish to comment? Council, may we get a motion?
Mayor, I move for authorization to execute the major development order for the construction of a two-story, 36,000 square foot headquarters building for Beast Code at Freedom Tech Center, 690 Liberty Lane Northwest, in accordance with the specified conditions.
Second.
And moved by Councilman Allegretto and seconded by Councilman Jeter to authorize the major development order for construction of a 36,000 square feet headquarters building for Beast Code and Freedom Tech Center. Further comment?
No, sir.
Comment?
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just again want to commend and thank you all for taking the investment, for the tenant, which is we're just fortunate to have in this community. And I don't want to fly through this business without landing the plane there for a little while. I mean, creating standard operating procedures and mission readiness for our country's national security, and then being from here, the developer being from here. These are things that you hope for in communities. These are things that you would want if you're designing a community, these type of partnerships, public-private partnerships. So again, the comment, Mr. Mayor, is again, just thank the developer, thank staff to get to this point, and excited about hopefully this development.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I would like just real quick to thank the staff. Your staff is excellent, helpful, pleasure to work with.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
I know you were a little disappointed last time you came in here, but I can honestly say it's probably the best thing that situation ended the way that it did, because we don't know how that vote would have went, and it could have went against you. I was surprised not to see it brought back up on the agenda based off of us having some more background and information on what the intent was there. So obviously that'll be for the next council, but I believe that the math makes sense regardless of what the original intent was, but the original intent behind it even makes it make even more sense in my opinion. But the main reason I wanted to comment is when we see development in our town and it gets posted by Get the Coast or whatever, you know, what is it? It's a gas station, it's a car wash, it's whatever. And most of those companies are some sort of private equity, wealth management or something like that. They're coming in and they're using the resources of our town. Those people don't live here. They're buying the property, they're developing it for money, and they don't have to deal with it. So I do appreciate all of the work that you do in our town, whether it's in the city of Fort Walton Beach or whether it's in the county, and you living here, and you're not going to do anything that you wouldn't have to drive by and say, oh my God, I built 40 gas stations in this town. I'm going to have to live with everybody around in here that's going to talk about me building gas stations or whatever. So I appreciate the development that you take on. I know it's hard. You probably don't get a lot of things, but you know, every project that I've seen you do is top notch, and it's still existing and it's still being used. It's not run down. It's not vacant. It's not abandoned. You know, so I know, based off of what I've seen in my time around here, you spend a heck of a lot of time and investment into this stuff, and I don't think that you probably get enough thanks for doing that, but I appreciate it because I will live here the rest of my life, and so will my kids. So I'd much rather see what you are doing than another Circle K or another Murphy's USA or, you know, not Ronnie's Car Wash. I apologize if Ronnie's in here, but or Tommy's, whatever it is. What's the other one?
Too many.
Ricky's or whatever. But whoever doesn't live here that owns these things, that's what I don't want to see. I want to see the people that live here invest in here, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
I'll ditto Travis there and say it's a beautiful building and it's an incredible business, and it's exciting to know it's going to come together. Congratulations.
All right. Council, please vote. Does pass unanimously. Thank you, Council. Item 13.5 has been moved. Thank you, Mr. Oden. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. So we have agreed to, we've changed the agenda to, now we're going to go to item 12.1. Ordinance second reading, 2159, ordinance amending the land development code section 5.04.32, the livery vessel rentals.
Ordinance number 2159, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fort Walton Beach, Florida, amending Chapter 5 of the Land Development Code relating to livery vessels, providing findings of fact, regulating livery vessels, modifying the definition of livery vessels, requiring permitting and a formal application process for livery vessels, provide for severability, and provide for an effective date. This is second reading, and Mr. Prezzetti is presenting on behalf of staff, and it's a quasi-legislative hearing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Prezzetti.
Yes, thank you. So this is a topic that we've had up for discussion a few times over the last year or so. Following the first reading, the motion was to remove the permit decal requirements for these boats. So the only change that we've made since first reading was we did strike through that specific section within the proposed ordinance to just remove that decal requirement in its entirety. We've not made any other changes. We did have discussion with one of the delivery operators in the community recently here as well, talking about maybe future changes or more changes. So of course we're always open to any changes that this council or future council would like. But with that, that's, like I said, the only change that we've made is that decal requirement.
Thank you, sir. Questions from council for Mr. Prezzetti? Mr. Walker.
Thanks, Mr. Prezzetti. Yeah, I just, in my continued quest how the clock was built, I thank the staff, all of your people that continually bring back the history of such things, because that's where it all began. And, I pulled up 2074, which was the original entry into regulating, correct? Read the history of it, meeting stakeholders and getting input and all, and here we are with a new and revised one and improved one. But the thing that just struck me was that the whereas in the original ordinance 2074, it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that whereas there are currently 22 livery vessel businesses with an active business tax receipt or seeking application for business tax to do business in the city, due to the increase, and this is the why, that's why I always ask, why are we regulating? were there problems? Were there accidents? Were there, I asked at the last meeting a couple, what is the big why? And so I had to go back to the beginning, and the big why, which doesn't sound like an acceptable why to me, but it was due to the increased city council, due to the increase in the number of them, therefore we will regulate them. There were 22 already in operation prior to ordinance 2074, or at the time of 2074. So, for that reason, I'm just one who has a libertarian mindset, and it's like, there were 22 that were in place. There was no reason stated other than they were just growing, and it seems to be government, not you, it seems to be government's action that when something's growing, to tax it and to regulate it. And I'd continue to stand opposed to the regulations there. Haven't heard any problems. We did hear about road boaters. We still don't know that any of this takes care of any of that. I've only received an official email notifications. I've only received objections, not support. And I know that the original 2074 does reference some concerns by some in the community, but there's no written documentation provided any of the background. So from a representative standpoint, I've only heard objections to it and staff's recommendations to make it. So I'll once again stand in opposition to this. Sure. Thank you.
Other comments from council for Mr. Presetti? Anyone from the public wish to speak, please?
Ben Merrill, 8 Bay Court. So I spoke last time, and I spoke with some of the attorneys, both attorneys actually in between, and just to clarify, this is the second reading for this ordinance to kind of make it easier to get the license, the business license every time. So while I appreciate the support, being a livery myself, even though it's not for Walton, I see how this benefits the current one. I don't think it's quite where everybody wants it, so I would ask you tonight, so we don't have to bring up liveries again and again and again, to possibly delay it 1 month. I worked with Mr. Gibson. There wasn't enough time, according to him, to kind of get everybody in line and put it through all the procedures, through all the channels that it needs to go. So if we had a little bit more time, I think we could clean it up to where the liveries in town are happy with it. As I'll be up here in a couple weeks, the last thing I want to do is reopen something that's passed and bring up liveries again and again. So if you guys would consider delaying it 1 month, I think I could work with staff along with the other liveries, and we could come up with something that they're happy with, that council's happy with, and we could find.
What is it that's still, I thought it was just the decals, and that's what we were moving the last time. What is it that's still hanging everybody up?
So there's different things with different liveries. So everybody, that's the problem with it. So one of the things is the redundant language for the current state regulations that already exist. So the city, where it has no real jurisdiction over that regulation, just repeats it. And so if you talk to Mr. Gibson, it's several pages long. I think it could be a page long. I think it could be the bullet points that we want to see. We talk about cleaning them up. We talk about having bathrooms. We talk about parking. We talk about certain things, which many aren't opposed to. But then we go into page after page of what's already regulated by the state. So there's some things there. There is some disagreement with other liveries on some of the, like the parking. And I think we'd like to let them be heard. I mean, you guys, they might speak after me, but maybe find a way to make it work for both parties. But that's the main thing for me. If this was my own personal endeavor and battle, I would probably agree with Mr. Walker wholeheartedly and be like, why are we regulating? I've tried to talk to the other liveries and say, what are you guys looking forward to? And so, not to speak on their behalf, but I have talked to several of them that aren't here, and that's kind of where they're at. They're just like, if we could clean it up and get it to a point where it's simple, it's basic, we're listed in the land development code, not every business is, but there's plenty of examples to pull from where that happens. So I think they're coming around to being like, okay, if this is going to be what it is, but if they want to work with the city, I think there's just a few things to clean up. And that's all that's left. And if it's my understanding, if this goes through, then it's like we're reopening the whole thing, where if we could just give it one more month. And I'm not asking for the 2 weeks, I'm not asking for a month, to where we have time, the season started, where we can get everybody together one more time, or at least for them to be aware and send a representative to talk to staff. I think we could get it to a point where it would be the last time we have to bring it up.
Mr. Jeter.
That kind of answered my question. And I'm not opposed to that. It's just kind of like we've been doing this for a year now. How long do we have to keep working?
Could have never brought it up if you don't want to. Sorry. I mean, that's, you know what I mean? That's like, it was put on us to figure out, and not everybody can always meet. And I'm, from understanding that the city wanted this, I was in that meeting. People, and I don't know why, I mean, I understand it from myself too. We thought these things were being imposed, and so there wasn't like remove that, remove that, remove that, remove that. Even though after talking to staff, they're like, I guess you could have asked and brought that forth. So it's more all the things that they brought up that were like, all right, well, let's fix the wording and let's make it work. So I feel like it's come to a point where it's like, hey, we had a little bit more say. Fort Walton, the best surrounding area compared to all the surrounding areas, gave us more of an opportunity for that. But I'd hate to get it this far and it feel like it's like we've done nothing but bring it up and be one more iteration away from solving it.
And you said it best earlier, you'll be up here in a few weeks, and I definitely share some of your frustration. And mine of that, going back to Chris, is there's so many times where there's a fine line between kicking the can, as Councilman Smith and other people said. We want to get things done, and we can go back and forth forever and hear arguments from both sides and put it back on staff and come back a month or two later. But there's a fine line between doing that too long and you never get anything done. But there's also a fine line between, like we've said before, we make an ordinance on airplanes, and then we have someone with their daughter crying the next week because we wrote it in a way where it affects somebody we didn't want to. So it's a tough.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
The 2074 ordinance, you mentioned as far as Mr. Walker, what kind of brought that up. In 2021, I believe there was, and Mr. Burns, you maybe help me with this, there was a moratorium on livery vessels in Destin, correct? Around that time.
Yeah, they actually passed it during 2020.
So going with this to build a question while also kind of responding to just another councilman to give him background. I was interested in 2021 and still interested to this day to Councilman Jeter's portion of getting things done while at the same time respecting, a future council person that may want to revisit any ordinance, to improve or to fine tune. So by all means, to employ you to come up here and let's revisit ordinances and things like that. This is a first stab at it. But the question was 2021 was around that time, the moratorium on the water vessels. So I was interested from a planning perspective. And I can't speak for anybody else, but from a planning perspective, the moratorium was happening in Destin, livery vessels going to different parts of the county and those kind of things. So I know there's that fine line. I know the word libertarian was used, and I respect that. I know there's a fine line with people want to do what they want to do with their properties or different things with their businesses, and there's a fine line between regulation and whatnot. But from a planning perspective, I know we'll also have another ordinance tonight discussing short-term rentals, but I put this in that same category from a planning perspective, and I commend the other council folks for bringing this item up, because we got to do some more planning because more people are coming to this beautiful place. So thank you.
Any other comments from council?
No
What else
questions.
is needed from the public? Council, may we get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we delay second reading voting on this ordinance until that 1 month, 2 more meetings from now, to give the community of livery vessel owners, business owners, to get together once again with staff. It seems like which is pretty typical, the more you talk, the more you understand. And my concern is that they're happy, and obviously staff wants to do something. So if they can work out something together that's good and makes them all happy, that's a win-win. And hopefully we could get that at the next reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Walker and seconded by Councilman Peters to delay till the second reading of ordinance 2159, amending land development code, section 5.04.32 for livery vessel rental.
Just so y'all are clear, it'll probably come back as a first reading if this changes are substantial. I see Chris nodding his head. I have no idea what Mr. Merrill, what changes he's indicated they want to make. But if it doesn't just simply cut out some stuff that's already in here, then it would probably, if it adds anything or if it cuts out a substantial portion of it, it probably would be coming back for first reading.
Mayor?
Mr. Alvarado.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Burns, please?
Certainly.
Is this, I don't recall a motion in the past to delay a vote of a motion.
It's basically a motion to table. I interpret it as a motion to table.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we're not making some kind of thing that's not.
Is your motion a motion to table?
It didn't sound.
Yes. Did you not hear motion to table come out of my mouth?
No.
It came out of my mind.
Okay.
It didn't come out of my mouth.
I just-
Motion to table or motion to table?
It's postponing and tabling to a specific date or the same thing. So if you want to table it to a specific date and not, if you table it indefinitely, that will kill it. So.
Okay.
So it's to a specific date.
Yes.
So table for 1 month is what we.
Yeah, to the second meeting in April.
Second meeting, 22nd.
All right, are we clear on the motion and the second?
Yes, sir.
Your second's still good?
Yes, sir.
All right.
For the comment?
Yes, sir.
And I respect that position, Mr. Walker, but since 2021, I feel like we've had multiple workshops, multiple agenda items on this conversation. Again, I kind of lean, as I weigh the scales, back to Councilman Jeter's comment about that fine line of getting things done and kicking cans down the road. I know the timing of this is unique, where we've been discussing this for almost over 3-4 years, and a new council member that is very involved in this niche. And again, I employ any future council person to discuss any ordinances or any items that they may want to fine tune, but I'm not going to support this motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Meade.
Same here. I had to reference the nice plaque y'all provided. But since September 26, 2023, we've been talking about revising this ordinance. We've had meetings. We've waited for the city of Destin to grind through the nuances and work with the livery companies over there. We've crafted it and we've looked at it, and then when we thought we were done, we had more public meetings with staff. There's always a reason to kick something down the road so we don't have to make a decision. We've got a council that's been working on this for a long time. We've called the question, not literally because the motion's to table it. I'm not going to oppose this, or I'm not going to support the current motion. I'm going to support passing the ordinance. We've worked with the folks, we've worked with the folks, we've worked with staff, and we've worked with council. We've done all these things. We've created, I think, or I feel, the best ordinance we can create today. And a month, a year, 5 years from now, there will be a better ordinance, and we can revisit it then. But we've got one now. We've passed it during first reading. We're here. We have a chance to put this behind us, and if we want to address it later, by golly, this is why we have other city council members and other city council dates. So I will oppose the motion, and I will support, if one is available to be made, supporting the ordinance before us for second reading.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I'll oppose it as well. We've been working on this, I feel like my whole 4 years I've been up here. I think that this ordinance, as it sits, I see 1 or 2 livery people in here. Every other time we've had this livery ordinance up here, we've been packed out. I've talked to some of the livery ordinance, or livery vessel owners. There's a big reason why it's not packed out. A lot of them don't see this creating problems for them to do business. It does not prevent them from doing business. As a matter of fact, I think staff has done a good job here of actually trying to help get them the flow of communication that they need to be able to do business in the city of Fort Walton Beach, which is something that we don't have now. We don't have a mechanism, to communicate back and forth with them of what they need, how they need it, and stuff like that. It also takes out some language in here, this specific ordinance does, it makes it harder for them to do business in the city of Fort Walton Beach. There's been meetings November, December, January. I don't think we treated any other business in this town the way that we treat the livery business, with trying to find a way to help them do business with the expectations that we have in Fort Walton Beach. And it's great to see, but at some point, it's time to make a decision instead of continue to kick the can down the road. I think that this is a good start. If there's more that needs to come after that, there's a whole other council for that. They can do whatever they want. They can have discussions on it. But this is a year and a half in at this point in time. Staff has spent a ton of time and effort on this. And I think that they've got it for the most part right, which is why you don't see 25, 30 people standing in the back here like we have every other time that we've had this ordinance on the discussion block.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? Mr. Allegretto?
Yes, sir. I'm not going to support this motion either. I tend to agree with what Councilman Meade and Councilman Smith have mentioned. I don't think it's perfect by any means. I think there's certainly changes that need to be done down the line. Just to that's where I've agreed with Councilman Walker from the jump on this particular thing. It always has seemed to me as if we're focusing on one industry of business and we're saying the rules for you are different than the rules for everybody else. When it comes to safety, I understand that, but when it comes to operating a business, I never have. So I think there are other changes that need to be done to the way that this industry is regulated by our city, because I feel it's one of the most overly regulated industries in the entire state of Florida. Again, I understand safety, but there's a lot of people involved in that situation. So I'm going to not support the motion to kick the can down the road. I am going to support the motion to move forward with this ordinance as we've basically worked with them to change it and get rid of the sticker situation. So I'll look forward to voting for that motion if it exists. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jeter?
Like I said earlier when Mr. Mayor was up here, it's tough. I second it in support. I will support it regardless of how the votes fall. That's what you just said, Councilman Allegretto. It's not perfect. It needs tweaking, and we know we need regulation in that industry, but we're getting ready to have someone in that industry that's up here, and it's a lot easier to provide insight from this side of the dais than it is on that side. So I would just welcome that. I would hate to go back to a first reading. I would hate to see it get extended or the can get kicked down the road, but I just think we're very close to getting it, a little bit better, and it'd be nicer to wait and get it perfected should that happen.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Walker?
Having made the motion, I'll just close it up here, I guess. Sitting here listening to us all and knowing the history not only of this library, and again, the only written documentation through the email to staff, to the city council, was in opposition. So, and then we've got a gentleman that's involved with it here, and we've heard from the others that are here. It's a hard-working group of people. I imagine they're tired, they're getting their boats ready, spring break is up on us, they're out there hard-working, but I just can't help but to think back when I stood right there and Travis stood right there and we begged this council to do certain things, and they responded the way they did. They went against the will of the people they had heard from. There were some imaginary silent majorities out there that weren't showing up, that weren't writing, and this council, this body, not us all individually up here, went against the will of the people. So the only will of the people that I know as a representative that I've received is the people who've spoken in opposition. I've not heard anybody walk up to that stand and speak in favor of it, and I've not received any written communication, so I'll stay in opposition to it in support of the people who have spoken to the matter, that are in the business. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? Council, please vote. And this motion does fail, 5-2. So we're open for other motion.
Mayor, make a motion to approve ordinance 2159.
Second.
Been moved by Councilman Smith, second by Councilman Dean to approve ordinance 2159, amending the Land Development Code section 5.04.32, livery vessel rental. Further comments? Comments? Council, please vote. Passes 5-2. Thank you, Council.
Mayor, can we take a 5-minute break after that before we do the short-term rental ordinance?
Certainly, yeah, we got one more to go, 13.6. So let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back. We are recessed for 5 minutes.
What are your plans for Tuesday for the next 10 years, huh? No more Flintstone, no more.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Thank you for the recess. We don't need a short break. But now we're going to do item 13.6, proposed short-term rental ordinance. Mr. Burns.
So back on, it was February 28th of this year, the council voted to bring back a short-term rental ordinance on April 8th. As part of that discussion, Mr. Jeter and several of the other council members kind of indicated they wanted something brought back by March 25th today. So this is the proposed ordinance. This is not a first reading by any means. This is not a rough draft either. This actually does reflect a lot of work between myself, Ms. Kopp, and staff. And it sort of originates the form of this ordinance. We took Destin's ordinance and South Walton's ordinance, and took portions of each of those ordinances that would be suitable for Walton. And by total sheer luck, Airbnb actually reached out to us and sent us something they approve of. And it actually happened to be very much in line with what we kind of come up with here. I know from previous experience, VRBO approved of Destin's ordinance. I'm not sure about Walton's, but we did take the portions of Walton's that were really different from Destin's. And so the kind of format of this ordinance is something that kind of has been utilized in a lot of communities, not only around the state, but in Florida, that kind of both the short-term rental industry has not really shown any objections to, and that it's been able to be utilized to kind of protect the residential subdivisions or residential zoning areas that sometimes are inordinately impacted by all of this. I know Mr. Mead had a question earlier about commercial events. Commercial special events is defined at the start in definitions, and then at the end it does spell out that commercial special events are prohibited, and also you cannot advertise them as well. There is one bit of confusion I noticed. Maximum occupancy is defined on page 7 of the ordinance, but actually it's then further defined later on in the ordinance as a series of the lesser of 3 choices. And so actually the maximum amount of people any one house can ever have at one point in time, ultimately, and you'll find that on page 11 of the ordinance, in section 8.13.07, would be a total of 24 persons per short-term rental. So if you pass this, that would be the maximum that anyone would ever utilize at a house. So, again, there's a lot to this. I don't know how much time y'all have had to look through it. Myself and staff, we're kind of looking for input from y'all, because this will be coming back for an actual formal first reading on April 8th. And it'll be going before the LPA next week as well. So, but kind of this is not actually a workshop, because y'all can actually make a motion here tonight, but we're kind of going to treat it like it's a workshop and get all the input we can from you.
All right, thank you. So, council, please provide feedback to Mr. Burns. Not only tonight, but even the next day or two, you still solicit more feedback from council, correct?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
Yes. All right, thank you.
We can also, if y'all want to call us up, we can talk about it like one at a time off the record as well, too. But it's nice just kind of to get an idea, and then if anyone from the public wants to provide input as well, too. So, yeah.
All right, great. Council, Mr. Jeter.
Thank you for all the research I've done and merging this together and really trying to make it fit our community. I think you guys do a very good job of that every time. Like you and I have talked, obviously support all regulation, especially the regulation that we can enforce. So just some of this in here, you already answered one question, because I saw there the maximum occupancy was in 2 different places, and it was 1 for 150 square feet. Then we're going to go by the lesser of option A, B, or C back there.
Correct.
Which is the square footage, because a lot of these are going to be, 2 persons each bedroom or the maximum. But you've kind of already clarified that and gone over that.
The version the LPA will have before will have that fix already made to it.
And then the BTR, say you have 5 properties under one entity, separate entities, is that BTR going to be specific? And some of this may be for you, Chris, what's easier for you all to enforce? Is it going to be like per property BTR, per entity BTR?
It's supposed to be per property, and I'll make sure it says that.
So each property you're going to have to have a separate BTR for, whether it's under the same entity or not. You're going to have to.
Correct.
And then what about the sign? There's a bunch of places in here, and I won't dive into the weeds tonight because I know we're going to work together going forward on it, but there's a couple different places where it identifies a sign. One sign for the property management company, and then one sign basically designating it, letting the community know it's kind of a short-term rental. Maybe, you know, I would like to see clarification, and again, it's kind of getting into the weeds, and we'll work forward on this, but like for example, when you go to Sandestin, if you have a construction or this and that, they have regulations on everybody's sign has to be the same size, same color, same information in the same place. I just don't want to get into somebody sticking a yard sign in the ground saying, well, it was here and it blew over there, or wow, there's a little bitty sign right here, you know what I mean? Maybe some more definitions on the sign, and you actually, you know, not have to buy the sign from the city, but here's the vendor where you got to go get it. It's this size, says this much information, and all the details are right there on the front. Does that make sense?
It does. In fact, that was something that Ms. Kopp and I went back and forth on, and I went out on cutting out. She wanted to have more of what you're asking for right there, and so we'll put it back in the note as we all want.
Yeah. Professional sign with a lot more details. That's all.
Mr. Schmidt?
Y'all know I like to drill in deep. You mentioned something that I didn't catch, the signs. I mean, similar to kind of like the stickers, maybe. I mean, do we need signs?
Well, in one section here is talking about the signs actually identifying who the property manager is and all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
I think to some extent, you know, you need some kind of.
So the purpose that the sign serves is to kind of aid more law enforcement than code enforcement, but also code enforcement in theory if they're going to work off hours when they're typically going to be called, or on the weekends when they're typically going to be called. But law enforcement can document a house that they go to if it's exceeding, you know, the number on there. They can then tell code enforcement staff about the violation, and code staff can then go out and cite them. So it serves as actually a simplification for enforcement of the sign. That's what the sole purpose of it. Yeah.
We'll stay in touch on that. I just, you know, we'll flush it. Maybe consider some of those things, because I think in theory it sounds good. The compliance and the enforcement of maintaining the signs, replacing the signs, as well as there's just a feel, just again, we'll flush this out over the next couple meetings, but on the front end, just to kind of maybe look for a consensus. I don't know if others, how they feel about it, but it kind of just feels like as if, hey, neighborhood, this house is a short-term rental. And sometimes kind of, I think it's going to give possibly a negative environment to that investor, to that property owner, that, you know, there's some, whether you're a short-term rental or a long-term rental, there's some people I live next to that I wish they were short-term rental. And there's some people that I live next to that are, you know, long-term rental that, or, you know, vice versa, that I wish some of the short folks were gone, were there longer, and some of the long-term rentals were gone shorter. That to say, we'll flush it out more in the second reading, but I just have some concerns about the signage.
Or in first reading, because we can try to at least maybe take Mr. Jeter, at least to specify, and then you can rip it up then at that point, at first reading, once you have something a little more concrete.
Awesome, thank you.
Mr. Watson?
You had said something there, and I missed the first part of it. I was reading, trying to look at it, but I've dealt with some short-term rental issues in my business, and how some people, it's always a cat and mouse, you know, so theoretically, I mean, they can figure out how to play that game, but you mentioned who's going to go in the house and see how many people are in there?
So the way it's enforced actually is it's usually going to be through the parking requirement, which is tied to the amount of people that the sign will indicate are allowed to be inside the house. So if they pull up after a certain time of night and there are X amount of cars parked on the property, then they can go up to that sign, do a calculation, and extrapolate. They're violating the parking requirement, which is tied to their maximum occupancy. So they can only have the maximum occupancy for 24 spaces in theory.
24 people.
24 people, sorry, 24
people, so is that 3 cargo vans? Is that 6 4-door cars? I mean, who's gonna, I mean, you're gonna look at the cars, there could theoretically, we know Ubers exist, because I don't see Ubers existing in here. I mean, and I'm trying to play the mouse, I guess, a little bit, but that you know, that ingenuitive entrepreneurial spirit says, look, I want to use my business the best that I can. I'm going to park the bus out here just momentarily, have your Ubers meet us here. And the Ubers take them over there, and there's no cars in the parking lot, right? There's no cars there, but there's all the lights are on in all of the windows, and you see heads moving. Are are the police going to be able to go into the house and determine how many people in there are violating?
That's a lot of effort for someone
Right. Right, I know, but that's, that's the cat and mouse game, because last time we spoke about it, and there was a big group of people here, and I was somewhat, just listening about I was surprised that the officers weren't going to the house. They were going around the side of the house maybe and trying to, it's cat and mouse.
I believe actually, because I read every single one of the police reports, they would usually go to the neighbor's properties
Right.
and walk and look at the property
Sure.
side, or they would be in the right of way sometimes, but usually they would go into the neighbor's property to then view. But to answer your question, this would not likely be probable cause for the police to just bust in and start counting people inside.
Right, so it's, and that's the cat and mouse. Like, once again, this all looks really good, but I don't think we have the staff. I don't think we have the police force. I think it's going to be feeling good for maybe some neighbors who are going to allege that there's a violation, and we're going to have officers back up here saying, well, I listened, I didn't issue any noise citations, there weren't any cars there, so I couldn't do it. So I know this will feel good for a lot of people, but I think we're at 22 pages of definitions and descriptions for cat and mouse game that, I think we've got noise ordinances in place. That was always, that was my kind of thinking, was noise ordinance would be the most annoying part of it for me and neighbors, but I don't know, during the daytime, if someone gets married in the back of my yard that's about the size of that, I don't know, it's not beautiful or anything, but I'm like, can I have people over here that gets married in my backyard? If I'm not disturbing the neighbors, if I'm not illegally parking on the road, if I'm not disturbing them. So I thought we had the stuff in place that you can't disturb your neighbors, and if you do, officers will show up and cite, and I thought there was going to be something, it's going to cite the owner, not the occupant. I get that. That's who you want to cite, is the owner of the property. I know we did it over here on Miss Garcia back then. She was in violation down on the water, or the leaseholder was, and she got it. So we can issue, the police, I believe, can issue a citation to the property owner. It's happening on your house. Mail it to them, certified. You're on notice. Here's a fine. I guess that's the way it works. But anyway, so it just seems like a lot of feel good to me, and I don't know that it's going to serve its intent. Look forward to workshopping it with everyone and sending you some questions and maybe getting some more feedback from the community.
Mr. Allegretto, I'll start up there.
Thank you, Mayor. If we're looking for feedback here, I really like that you said that you already heard from Airbnb as a company. I really like that this is taken from municipalities right around us. And uses the best of that kind of stuff to craft this into new ordinance. I really want to make sure that we as a city put it out to the people that own short-term rental properties and to neighbors of short-term rentals as well. And I want to make sure that we factor everything in to say this is the best ordinance that we can craft as a municipality based on all of the rules that exist through the state, etc. And I want to make sure that we're, as Mr. Jeter brought up with the sign situation, that we're looking at all of those little things, because I think the more people that we hear from, and maybe Mr. Ravine can help with this, is just putting this out to the public and saying, is there anything we're missing here? Is there anything that you see? Can we get in contact with some other short-term rental owners, that maybe have 4 or 5 properties in our city, or around the county even, or in Destin, or in Sandestin, that can say, hey, this really works, or hey, this really helps, or hey, this really sucks. And that way we would know this is something we need to eliminate. And I understand that it'll be noticed and all that stuff, but you've given us this good opportunity now of getting this out into the public beforehand, before even on first reading. So I like what I see. I don't know a ton about what I'm looking at. When I hear from people like Mr. Jeter, I pay attention to that, because he does know. what he's looking at, and he does know what he's talking about. So I want to hear from more Jeters on this type of situation, and I'm just using the name as an example. I don't want his brother down here.
Be
telling me
careful
about it.
what you wish for. There's
No, believe me, I understand.
You have the whole state of Kentucky down here in about.
Believe me, I understand. Yeah, I'm not looking for that. Just more people like Councilman Bryce Jeter sharing their thoughts on this. So I think you're on the right track. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
To piggyback on that, you said it best too. We're massaging this early. It's in first reading. I'm glad you sent it out here. I'm like you. I want to get it sent out to more people than just myself. But and what Councilman Walker said earlier, I feel like every ordinance or resolution, anything we do up here comes back to enforcement. You know, we have 2,000 of them. We've got to enforce all of them. They were all created for a reason. That goes back, not solely on Chief Beige. It goes back to code. It goes back to us. It goes back to us, regulating our neighbors and reporting what we see. And I know you give a lot of, hypotheticals and examples, and I certainly like them, Mr. Walker, but, I remember a year ago we were talking about putting art. Can someone not sell art in their shed in their backyard? And it's like, well, that's how it starts. But then they build a 5,000 square foot building and they got a commercial, business in their backyard next to two neighbors. And it's two people getting married. That's how it starts. I get it. But then you want to have 500 people in your backyard. So I think that is, again, I'm with you sometimes. I don't support a lot of government regulation. I like the free market, but the government's got to be here sometimes to step in and stop a problem before it goes out of hand. And back to the regulation side, I'll tell you how it's regulated. If you have a property, and I do support this and have short-term rentals, but I also support regulation for them because I have short-term rentals next to somebody who just says, well, I'm gonna put bunk beds in every room, and now I'm gonna say I can have double the amount of people that you do for the same price. Like Chief Beige said, if we really, it goes back to enforcement, if we have, whether it's Mr. Troy Williams or code enforcement, and I'm able to report that, it's real simple. You can go on VRBO and go, look, this 3-bedroom, 2-bath right next door to me, 1,200 square feet, says it sleeps 24. Really? A 3-bedroom, 2-bath, sleeps 24 bunk beds there? It's on the internet. It's plain as day. You can go to VRBO and see it. It shows the house. It shows the address. So you can almost prevent, and this is where we get back to not government overregulation, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You could simply report that to VRBO. You could submit it to Chief Beige if you have, whether we do a sign or not, if staff has the person who owns that property, the property manager, and everything on file, you're able to immediately say, look, we've got proof of you trying to rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 24 people. I don't care if you walk there. I don't care if you get there in an Uber. I don't care if you get there on an e-bike. I don't care if you sneak in a backpack. But you're advertising 24 people in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So there's a lot of ways to regulate this. I'm glad we're starting early so we can kick this can down the road a few more meetings, but we'll eventually massage this and get it to where we want to be, because there needs to be regulation before we're inundated. And we're just like, I feel like this is Fort Walton Beach. We're trying to always say we're trying to get to Fort Walton Beach 2.0. I figure I always feel like Fort Walton Beach 1.0 is we'll address that when it's a problem. It's too late. Let's address it before it becomes a problem. Does that make sense?
It does, and I love these conversations. And the cat and mouse in the regulation and the stopping it and all. I support the entrepreneurs who work their way around that and say it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, sleeps, whatever the code will allow, 16 people. However, 12 people are not allowed to sleep on the additional couches and trundle beds that are on property. That's a cat and mouse. You see what I'm saying? We try to impose this on an entrepreneur, and they say, well, what do I have to do to get around it? I said, well, you can advertise 24, you can advertise 12. You just say, well, okay, the additional beds, y'all can't sleep on them. So, and I was reading actually here, I found it interesting. I think it's might have been in the whereases here, but it said that, it was presented as one of the problems, but that kind of made sense. And the gentleman who spoke here earlier, I imagine he's got a big home, it sounds like, but it says the problem is they just rent them for a flat rate, not based on occupancy. So it encourages them to bring more people or something. I'm just like, that's too hard to even. Did you see that? I mean,
I do, yeah. And we'll get into the weeds with the first and second reading. But here's my biggest thing: it gives us It gives staff, it gives Chief Page, it gives us another avenue to, and I've lived next to one before, for example. Put it this way, I've lived next door to one multiple times. And you can't ever, you have no recourse. Your only option is to call the police. And if the police can't go out there and do anything about it, you can't get in touch with the guy because he didn't live here. So you gotta wait a week or maybe 2 or 3 weeks before you get a chance. There's other people in town, whether it's myself or others, that live in the community. It goes back to what Councilman Smith just said about Jay Odom. Jay Odom's not gonna do a bad project because he drives by it every day. The people who come in here and do other projects in our community may not care as much. All the ones that I have, that we manage, that we maintain, people reach out to me directly because they have my information, even though it's not on with the staff yet or Chief Page doesn't have it. The community knows, oh, I can just call him or text him before they even call the police and I'll go fix it. Whether I send a message through VRBO. So there's a lot to unpack and a lot to uncover. It needs to be regulated before it gets out of hand. And there's ways that there's things that we can do in this resolution that make it where the community can police it a little bit better. I don't want to put all this on staff and Chief Page. Does that make sense? We need to hold
I
people.
don't want the neighbors, policing me. I want an arbitrator there. I want the police there. If I'm loud at my house that I own and I'm cranking up the music and I'm partying and I'm that one, then they're going to call on me and they're going to come over and talk to me. The police are. I don't want the neighbor coming over there and getting in my face and telling me I'm violating some law they've seen. I want the police out there. That's who enforcement. It's police or code enforcement. Those are the only two.
Not really, because if you have an electronic door code and you send me an email, if I have one next to you and you send me an email and say they're being loud and this person and that person, I can simply go on VRBO and send them a message and say, hey, we're having this kind of issue. Your door code won't work tomorrow if we don't change that. 9 out of 10 times, that's going to get it in compliance. I'm like you. I try to fix stuff before you call the police. Unless it's a vagrant. Unless it's a vagrant, we're calling the police immediately.
Some owners may say, you need to call the police. I'm not, they may not be.
And guess what? The police officer's now going to have a record of file of who the property manager is. They're not just going to come out there and say, well, I don't know loud noise or this and that. They're now going to say, well, let me go on and call Mr. Jeter because this is registered to him. We have some regulation on this property. Let me go on and inform him that we're out here and we're not going to write a citation tonight, but we're trying to enforce the law.
So that is, the responsible person's a big aspect of it.
That's the biggest thing about this, is having a responsible party to contact.
Thankfully, I won't have to be around for this 1.5-year discussion because that's probably the direction that it's headed. But I would just like to emphasize, I've talked to some of these code enforcement officers. These guys want to do their job. The problem comes is when they do their job and then that person comes right up to that microphone and you guys let them off the hook. That's when the problem comes. There's got to be some sort of accountability. If there's not, nothing is ever going to change no matter how many pages you put in code. So just remember that your next 2 and 4 years, that when you have violators come in here, they're going to give you every sob story under the face of God's green earth about why you shouldn't take their money. If code did everything right, like, I wouldn't say all the time, but I would say that they have been pretty spot on it here lately since we've been pressing the issue the last 2 years. You cannot fold like a cheap suit when somebody comes up to that microphone. You've got to hold them accountable. Every single election we go through, what is it? It's blight, it's blight, it's blight, it's blight. That's a form of blight. Everybody's going to come in here and they're going to give you, like I said, every sob story underneath the sun. It comes down to personal accountability and responsibility. Either they're going to have it or they're not. And if they're not, I guarantee you, if you take some money from them and they feel a little bit pain, it doesn't get that way again. And I know it sucks that we have to be here, but we didn't put ourselves in this position. That person put us in this position. And we have to do our job to back up that code enforcement department because there's only 3 of them. They're busting their butt, and they've been doing everything that we've been asking them to do. So to do that, and then give it away, it's a demoralizer for them. I can tell you that right now.
And continuing that, if staff feels like we're not going to support them and we're going to cave under an applause-o-meter or something of the sort, then they're not going to enforce them and they're not going to bring them to us. if we send the message to staff, not only do we appreciate you doing it, but when you bring it to council and you do it in a proper manner, you've got the backup, you've got all those things, that we will 100% be behind you, then I think code enforcement, like you're saying, will continue to get better. But back to the subject at hand, is it Mr. Busetta?
Yes, sir.
The manner in which he presented himself, the manner in which, I'm not speaking to the substance, but was a professional. And someone who understands rules and codes, and I think that what you've presented to us is the kind of thing that will catapult people who want to work with rules and grow their businesses, whatever they may be. And this will encourage those professionals who, this is a business, to, when the police show up with a neighbor calling on the cars, the police don't have to interrupt the guests, because the police will know before they enter and before they interrupt anyone, this is the right number or the wrong number. So all these mechanisms in place, I believe, like with the livery ordinance, which we'll hopefully do, is encourage compliance and facilitate those following the rules to succeed, and help to keep the ones who aren't following the rules and are hurting the operators who are following the rules. It'll weed those out. So if a person isn't following the rules, they're getting an unfair advantage. But those who embrace the rules and embrace the process, such as what you're presenting with Airbnb and VRBO, which is nice to hear. I hope.
I was very surprised.
Yeah. So I'm actually encouraged, because those who embrace and follow these, I hope will succeed with these, as opposed to the corollary. So I encourage those to continue with this process.
All right.
Yeah, to copy and paste what Mr.
Last call, and otherwise, I think, Mr. Burns,
And like I said, y'all can all reach out to me one-on-one,
Yeah.
share me the concerns. The more input we get, the better item Chris and I will be able to bring back.
Yeah, and that's where I was getting ready to go with the input, to kind of copy and paste what Mr. Mead said, but not to put too much emphasis on this item, especially just in a conversation. I know we got the first reading, the second reading, but this is really, really important, because as we expand our rec center, as the bridge gets done, as our friends to the east of us are fighting over beach access property and the island with public beach access, it's bigger than just an ordinance. We have a lot of blight, or have areas that I think this market will continue to capitalize on improving the blight, which is through the short-term rental process and other things. But from a planning perspective, this is huge, because I really do believe 10, 15, 20 years from now, around the mountain, all that stuff that we've been strategically planning towards for a while now, we're going to see some things like what happened off Old Highway 98 over the years, if we're not taking these things serious, and we are through this process. So thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
Any comments from the public?
It's technically not
Yeah.
something that requires it. It's up to council.
I'll give you one bite at the apple if you keep it short.
It'll be real short. Sir, I'm not sure the exact date that Airbnb called you, but I did call Airbnb and ask them to reach out to our city members, so.
That was in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, that probably would have been, I contacted about a month ago, tried to get with their city policy people, so that might be in coordination, maybe.
It was actually, they referenced another individual, I'm sure, yourself.
So we talked about quickly about double beds and 24 people and in a 3-bedroom house, but it's not the people that in the house that's the issue, is it? I mean, it's not. We've got traffic issues, right? So parking's part of that, I think, right? Is that what we're trying to cut down? Parking issues, traffic, but in noise, right? Is that kind of what we're getting at? Is that what we'll limit the people? Because you can have 24 people at a house, you can have 36 people, you can have 50 people at a house, and they can be quiet, right, and not break codes. So I just want to make sure that when we're thinking about this, when we're talking about go workshopping it, and we're going to bring it out to the public that these are the things, we already have code enforcement for noise complaints. Like, we already have that. We already have parking violations. We have codes for the right way to park. And so when we're going to regulate this further, and we're going to go out and try to put a stamp on it and put a Star David sign or whatever we're going to do for the business owners that have vacation rentals, I just want to make sure that we already, you know, in my example, I've had over 60 calls for noise at my property, but not a single citation. I'm not saying that the neighbor didn't hear someone talking outside, or that maybe there were people that were a little louder at, you know, 6 p.m. On a Saturday, but that's not against the code. So it's never been the case. So as we're talking about this, we need to put tracking systems in for the people that are calling and making false complaints. And we need to hold them accountable as well. So if someone's getting all these false complaints and someone's trying to use the police to harass their neighbors, then we also need to be able to track that as well. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Teeter.
One thing, not so much of that, just the chief page. Maybe look into citing the property itself, maybe not necessarily the individual. We're not doing that avenue tonight, but obviously we'll massage this the next 2 or 3 weeks. But that's where we go back to this regulation, having the property manager, that person gets cited, not necessarily the person that's, you know. I know you've got some South Florida knowledge on that. We've already discussed it, so we may need that to come to light in the next couple months.
All right, thank you. Thank you, council. It's been a good discussion. If you have further input, just get a hold of Mr. Burns and give him your thoughts. So we'll do this process looking forward. And with that, I'm going to go to city manager reports.
Great. Mr. Brad, bear with me for just a second. We've got quite a few meetings coming up. I'm glad to see some of our incoming council members have stayed with us. They might as well get used to it because this is how it works. The first meeting is obviously the most important one to them, which is April 1st. It will be, their swearing in will be at 5 o'clock. We will be taking pictures, so dress accordingly or whatever you want. But just remember, we'll be taking our group photo, which will be carried forward on our budget and now publicly, and then individual shots so that we can identify them on our website. The next meeting will be, our next regular council meeting will be April the 8th. We've got we're starting earlier there because at 5 p.m. we'll have the orientation for the new members. Of course, you guys are obviously the ones that are staying are welcome to join us. We'd like to have the whole group. Then again, we'll follow that 6 o'clock for our regular meeting. Then on the next meeting after that is the regular April 22nd. We're having a charter update for the amendment that you guys are, I'm sure, going to be interested in. And we want to talk a little bit about the ordinance review where we see some real trouble with a few of the items, maybe get a little bit of direction from y'all moving forward on that. And that's about it for the meeting schedule. But now I get to make a few comments. I'm glad to formally congratulate Ms. Riley, Mr. Browning, and then I think Mr. Merrill already slipped out. But we're really glad to have y'all. Look forward to serving with you, working with you any way we can. Obviously, I'm always here for you, just as I am for the council. But so glad to have you start joining, helping in the discussion. I'll start with the council members that are leaving. Travis, I mean, I can't say enough good about you. You know how I feel about you. I've known you for a long time. I worked with you before we got to the point where you were elected. Obviously, I was part of that process, I think, to some effect. Always glad to see it. You've done a great job. You know how I feel about you. I don't need to say it, but you've done an outstanding job as a council member. I'm very proud to have been up here with you and been able to learn also from you. Same way for Mr. Mead. I mean, the experience that you guys are obviously younger than me, but the experience that you bring and bring to this council, I think is invaluable to the city. I don't know what to say other than I hate to see you guys go. I'm always glad to see new people come, but I do hate to see both of you leave. As for Mr. Mayor, I'm one of the few, Miss Janie's here, I was here on your first meeting, and strangely enough, I'm going to be here on your last meeting. I served together with the mayor as a council member, which was an honorable time for me. I feel it definitely was a great time for me to serve with him. We didn't always agree on things, but we did agree on some very important things as we served as council members together. Never thought I would ever see or find myself in this position, but seeing us through to where I am, I'm very honored to have served with not only the mayor, but also the two of you, sincerely. You guys can read the backup report on what we've been doing as a city. We are working on the transition to the new city manager. That's taken up a lot of Ms. Barnes and mine's time. We have also just been doing the general work of the city, as you guys know. So we're always available for questions, or if you need anything, obviously all of you from now and into the future, whether you're on there or not, we're here for you. So we appreciate all that you've done for the city, and I think I speak for all the staff that we have enjoyed serving with you and for you. So carry on. That's all from Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burns?
Nothing tonight, so we can end earlier.
All right. All right, so we'll go to council final comments, and we'll start with Mr. Schmidt.
Great. We'd like to congratulate Miss Debbie and Mr. Merrill, and then we have Logan as well. Congratulations. Looking forward to serving with y'all. Travis, it's been a good ride, learning a lot with you, learning a lot, serving through times that weren't always easy, and I just appreciate you stepping up. Stepping up in times where, again, you could have continued to focus on your priorities of your family and business that y'all are very, very blessed to have in this community. We're blessed to have in this community, blessed to have you. So thank you for stepping up 6 years ago and addressing a conviction that was a lot bigger than a fire fee. A lot bigger than a fire fee. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you for your service. Mr. Meade, thank you for stepping up. You know, coming back in a time where, again, you know, the culture of the time where it was at 2 years ago, it was not probably the easiest decision with your family to make a decision to come back. And with your experience and your wealth of knowledge, thank you. We've pushed the culture, improved the culture these past couple of years to a place where customer service and staff believe is in a better place because of the service that you and Travis have provided. So thank you. Mr. Mayor, 16 years? Wow. I mean, you know, just 8 years is like what Travis mentioned earlier on, is impressive. Not only just your years of service in the military, years of service in public service here. Words can't really put to what that means. It's hard to explain because of how many people don't really truly understand what you go through, what we go through, whether it's pirates getting mad at us or other folks or different things that we stand on, and now more recently without a penny for it. So thank you for that. And Miss Janie, you know, it's been an inspiring and neat to see you by his side throughout this whole process, all the way up until this very last meeting. And you do it in a way where you always have a smile on your face, and I'm sure there's a lot of things that go on inside your head and your heart sometimes, but you do it and being the First Lady, and it's been an honor to see y'all operate, not only business-wise, but personally. So thank you for your service. And Mr. Mayor, Allegretta, looking forward to these next couple of years underneath your leadership as mayor. That's all I have on that. The last thing as far as business goes, I just want to bring this up and try to keep the momentum going, especially since I was inspired a couple meetings ago by the way Travis asked the question. But status update on the rec center expansion. I just wanted to throw that out there.
You want one?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
The ITB
So the, well, that's a painful process sometimes when you're dealing with the city. We're still in the process. I go to Julianne and ask her periodically, hey, have we gotten it back from the director yet? And I try not to tell you guys we're doing something when we're not doing it. It is not out for ITB yet, but we hope to have it out. There's a few small details, if I'm correct, on that we're trying to work out the last few things before we're able to go out to get a really good clear bid. So hopefully we'll have that for you in the next couple of weeks. But I know there were a few, I think, design tweaks exactly that we're waiting on to just have that product ready to go. While we're on that note, I do have a little bit of an update on the Liza Jackson improvements. That's probably going to move a little bit. That's moving a little bit quicker. There's definitely some issues in the city as far as how we approve charges and things for small things that hold these projects up. But as Mr. Meade and I have had this discussion, that just shouldn't. And those are some of the small policy things I think that need to be changed from this office that will make purchasing a little bit easier and make these, we're talking about millions of dollars, but $300 seemed to slow these down for months at a time. We had a permit that we owed to FDEP, one governmental entity, you guys in the city, paying one other governmental entity, and it took a while for it to get it through our process for approval to actually charge that credit card. It took nearly a month. So those types of things have got to be streamlined a little bit better, with still some oversight over those. But I think we have some competent people as our directors, so that's one of the changes I'm trying to make, is Nicole and I have talked about that a little bit, but to streamline, I guess would be the word, to make that process not hold up for months for some small things. And we have had some issues with our finance years ago, but I think we're at the point where, gosh, we've got to let some of these protection nets down just a little bit. And I spoke a little bit with Angela about it, and it just drags on. It adds months and months to some of these projects, just these small, waiting for our staff or their staff or something, So those are some of the things we do.
A lot of pins bouncing and things like that.
It is. It seems simple when we say, hey, just pay this. Well, it takes 2 or 3 weeks to get through our approval process, and then, hey, we can finally put the credit card number in. Well, hang on a minute, really? So I think there needs to be some check and balance, but gosh, it's just holding these up. And things that you guys have had personally, before I got here, a lot of times it was held down in some type of our own governmental red tape here at the city. So trying to streamline a few of those processes still leaves some guardrails up, but it's got to work better. But it is, again, I've tried not to tell you anything that's not happening. We are still waiting on 1 or 2 of the design items, but it is going.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear, and we'll keep asking that.
Yeah.
Because I know y'all are collaborating and doing different things, but want to keep that on there. Last, and I'm not going to unpack this all tonight, but did receive a concerning email about, I believe it was the email that Travis was mentioning at last meeting from the Bowlegs. But one thing I do just want to address, or at least ask Chief Page, in that email it was, quote, homeless they allow to stay in the woods next to the hut, end quote. Do we know if we've authorized or allowed anybody that's homeless to stay in the woods next to the hut? Okay. Again, not going to unpack it all tonight. There were some concerning allegations that they made in that email about current council without mentioning anybody's name. That was one of them. And I just have some concerns. But I heard you say no. No. Thank you, sir. All right.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I think you get out what you put in. Debbie, Logan, you guys worked your butt off, and it showed. Congratulations. I think that I've sat on that side, and I've sat here and I've watched council people insinuate that the public is stupid. I think that what happened is further proof that they're not. They want someone that'll work for them. And you guys worked your butt off to get elected, and good job, because you deserve it. And I look forward to you guys being up here. It's going to be a little bit of more of a culture shock than I think that it would be with everything that we've got coming here by the end or middle of the year, I guess 3/4 of the way through the year. But if you guys need me, I'm here. I think what Kirby was saying earlier, it's okay to disagree on things. It absolutely is. And no matter what happens at the end of the day, having a healthy respect, me and Kirby, I don't know that we agreed on much while I was up here. But it's okay to disagree on something, but still have respect for a person. That way you can still have a conversation and be able to get things done. I fully support you guys, and anything that I can do to help make you successful, let me know. I live in the city, I'll live in it for the rest of my life. I want it to be successful. So if there's anything that I can provide to you guys, questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is, pick up the phone and call me. I'm not going anywhere. So I'm excited for a little break, to be honest. I'm quite sure my employer is a little bit even more excited for a break, for me to put a little bit more focus in on my job than the job that I get paid for versus the job that I don't get paid for. But this is definitely an eye-opening experience, and I appreciate everybody, Dennis, you stepping up. I know people didn't like it in the beginning, but I think it's been proved that, it was the right decision. And I think that you got enough staff behind you that see that you're there to make the city a better place until we get a permanent replacement. Mm-hmm. I wish Jeff was here. I got a lot of appreciation for Jeff, butting heads with him over the last couple of years and the effort and stuff like that he put in. You know, Chief Beige, you know, I appreciate the job that you guys are doing over at the police department, continuing to get better. Every single day when we come in here, if you ask for a boat, my butt will be down here so fast arguing that you don't need a boat. So just understand, I'm watching. Two now, right? Two. That's what I like to hear. Chief Morgan, I appreciate your professionalism. I know that the fire department probably hasn't looked at me very favorably since I've been up here. And personally, that doesn't bother me. At the end of the day, it's how we interact, very professional. You know, never held on to things. We could have conversations. You could voice your disagreements. I could voice my disagreements, go the other way. And I really appreciate that dialogue. So I wish you all the best in the future. I'm not saying nothing to you. Don't worry about that. Where's Danny at? Danny, I think you have the most well-run department in this city. I truly do. All that you guys are responsible for at the end of the day. I know you catch a lot of heat for the potholes and this and that and everything else, but anybody watching this, I promise you, if you report it, that thing will be fixed pretty darn quick. If there's a pothole, it's because they don't know about it. There's only so many of them. They can't be everywhere in the city at once. But any issue, anytime we've had anything with you guys, I mean, you guys are Johnny on the spot and you take care of it. And I appreciate it, and I'm sure your guys don't get enough praise for the job that they do. But again, like I said, I truly feel like that department's probably the best run department in this city, really, at the end of the day. So, Chris, your guys over there in code, man, they probably got the toughest job, if you ask me. But you know, I hope I can shed a little light for those guys tonight. Anything I could do in the future, please let me know. I'll do it. You know, you guys could get them some help over there in that department. I'm sure that they would appreciate it. I know it's going to be tough with some of the challenges that we have coming. But you know, that's just, I guess, at the point where we're at. As far as that's concerned moving forward, I'm going to continue to come to the meetings. I'm not going to abandon the process and just throw it in y'all's laps. You know, y'all are ultimately going to be able to make the decision on it, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to try to help the city work through the issues, because absolutely there are issues with this thing. And anything that I can do to help, I'm absolutely more than willing to come down here and do it. Now, I'm not going to spend 4 or 5 hours down here, but I'll spend 15, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. You're me on a time limit when I come in here, Nick. Mayor, I appreciate everything that you have done. I know it's been you know, kind of maybe a bumpier ride here these past 2 or 3 years, but I have nothing but respect for you and the job that you've done. Whether we agreed or whether we disagreed, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Decisions are made, we move on. And you know, I'm really proud to be able to sit up here with somebody that spent 16 years in the city, because like I said, I don't know how you did it. 4 years has felt like an eternity, so I couldn't imagine what 16 feels like. Thank you. But John, I appreciate everything. David, if anybody wants to complain about me, blame this guy. He's the only reason I'm sitting up here, really, at the end of the day. I got tired of sitting there watching him get beat up. I said, you know what? I'm going to go stick my nose in that, and they're going to have to beat both of us up. Which that happened for a couple of years. But Bryce, I appreciate you making the bet with us that if I got elected, then you'd run.
I regret that bet.
I bet you do. But I appreciate it. I don't know that I ever foresaw this on my fortune cookie, is sitting up on a board of 7 with 2 of my best friends. And you know, I don't know how many people actually knew that we were best friends or not, but I can promise you this: if you go back and look at the voting record, you may not be able to tell. And if you really want to be able to tell how good our friends we are, come sit by the fire, drink a little bit of bourbon with us and watch us argue. But I need to shut up because I don't want this thing to go on forever. But I'm truly appreciative for the opportunity to come up here and represent the citizens. I'm glad, or I feel like I'm relieved. I might get a little bit of a break, but I can't say that this is the end for me. I may be back. I don't know. We'll see how I feel in 2 or 4 years, or if you need someone to fill in or something like that. But again, I just want what's best for the city, and now I have way more knowledge about it than I had in the past, and anything that I can do to help make it successful, I'm willing to do it. I'm a phone call away, and I will literally answer the phone for anybody. Doesn't matter. If I disagree with you on absolutely everything. Like I said, me and Mr. Locklear disagreed on quite a bit up here, but I got an email the other day that he was applying for a CAC position on the TPO. And I made him my nominee to be up there, and I think he's going to be a great asset to the city. Speaking of that, last thing I got to say. Me and Mayor were the TPO representatives. We're both gone. We've got a lot of momentum push with this around the mound deal. It's going to be very, 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 very important to put 2 of the more experienced people back on that board to continue that push. And it's going to be really important here between now and the end of the year when selections come out about which route we're going and the design phase and about how we push forward. So just keep that in mind when you guys are making a board, because Mayor was on it for, you were the vice chair of the region, or was it the regional?
Yeah, I've spent 16 years kicking around that, and I've been on the TPO, I've been on the MPOAC for the last 7 years, last 8 years. I'm just looking at my own notes, and they're big in giving up the money as well. So yeah, we need strong representation.
But that's going to be the biggest thing that the city's going to see outside of that bridge. So we need very strong representation on that. So I'm sure you guys put the right people on there, but I will tell you that it's a very comprehensive board. There's board members sitting on that thing for 4 years that are still trying to figure out how it works. So there is a lot to it. So other than that, I appreciate everything. I appreciate all the city employees. I know I put a lot of pressure on you guys, but it's only because I believe that you guys can get the job done. I would say that I feel like, from my perspective, that we're running leaner and meaner than we have for one reason or another. But I think that everybody's doing a good job, and I think that we're going in the right direction. And the challenges that we have coming in front of us, like I said, if y'all need help, I've got a lot of suggestions. A lot of them are going to be crappy, but I could probably hit one out of 1,000. I promise you that. I'll just keep throwing it out until something sounds good. But again, I appreciate everything from everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Walker.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard to follow that. I'll be brief.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Riley, Mr. Browning, congratulations. Look forward to working with you. As you've both seen and experienced, we won't always agree, but it's always nice to have people that we can have a conversation with and respect up here. So thank you and congratulations. To Mr. Smith, I'm going to address you all in brevity. John, Mr. Mayor, all 3 of you, have nothing but respect for you. Thank you all for your service to the community with your own perspectives and thoughts, and that does lead to disagreement occasionally, and I think that's good for representatives to have. It helps things become better. So you guys have taught me so much, and I love learning. I've learned from each of you and respect each of you greatly for your service and your commitment to the city. So thank you all.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Allegretto.
I will too be brief, but Ms. Riley, Mr. Browning, Mr. Merrill, congratulations. I've certainly reached out to each one of you just to tell you that. That's a hard thing to do, but it's a valiant pursuit, as I think you've heard tonight from all of the comments from everybody. It does mean a lot. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and it takes a toll on your brain and your family as well. But it is ultimately worth it, because when people ask me why I did this, I would always say, because 7 people are going to make decisions for me and my family. Why not be one of them? I mean, at the end of the day, that's really the reason that we're all here, because we want to make reasonable, rational decisions. And as Mr. Smith stated earlier, it is good to have disagreements. I love that when we have councils, that every vote isn't 7-0 or 6-1. There's been times, certainly recently, when we've gotten a little farther away from that. There's been times when I first started when it was 7-0, 6-1 every single time. You want that balance. You want those disagreements. You want people coming from different backgrounds with different opinions on things. And we've had great discussions up here. And I certainly thank Mr. Smith, Mr. Mead, and Mr. Ray Nearson for all of their time and all of their discussions, and allowing me to learn and grow and not know things and find out things. I can't tell you how many times I've just sat right here and listened to each one of you speak, and I've learned something that I didn't know before. And I just, as a person, as a human being, appreciate that. So thank you guys. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Baird?
Yes. I, for one, Ms. Riley, I welcome you up here joining me as another woman up here. It's kind of lonesome with all these guys, but I've enjoyed getting to know all of you, and I've known many of you for a long, long time. I've been here since 1970. I've sat out there for years and years and years and have watched the council grow, disagree, and all. And I am grateful to be up here. It's not an easy job. You have to have tough skin and be able to do your homework. Do your homework. We represent the city. We represent the people that put us here, the taxpayers, the residents. Get out there with my little red hat. I'm everywhere. I listen, and I bring, and I drive him crazy. Hey, we've got to take care of this here. We need to do it. Have you seen this? You know, but they need to hear us. They need to hear us say that. I think I've learned from all of you. I've learned from all of you, and I will miss you. But having said that, I look forward to working with you also too. We have plenty of parks, recreation. We need to work on our infrastructure. Memorial Parkway. It looked like the sidewalks looked like San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco, but thank you for working with us to smooth it down. And the people that are handicapped, especially, and that we walk there all the time, they say thank you, thank you, thank you. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we're adding sidewalks on the other side of Memorial Parkway, but it really looked like this here for a while. So thank you on that. Again, the infrastructure. We have parks, recreation, okay, but we need to work on our infrastructure. We truly need on our roads and other things, please, please. And I know that I learned that you can only pave the streets on whenever the temperature's just right. Is that correct, Daniel, or whatever? So August, the people over there at Silver Sands and Wright Parkway are looking forward to that pothole being taken care of over there, and also on Tula and I had the privilege to join the police with the police academy for the last couple of months. I learned a lot. If you have not taken that police academy, it's, how many weeks is it, Chief Beige? 8 weeks, I think it is?
It's 8 to 10 weeks.
8 to 10 weeks, one night a week. They'll serve you food, you know, but active shooter, you can take part, you can do the gun thing and all that. and you can ride with the police, not just in the daytime, but at nighttime also, you know. And I thought I knew what the police department was, but I didn't realize that we had there's a lot of things going on in that police department. And they work together with my favorite people over at the hospital on how to trauma, you know. So I encourage everyone, if you have time, one night a week, you know, for 6 to 8 weeks. And I think we're trying to have another one in August, I think it is. Possibly, I'm talking it up. We had 15 or more people, I think, attend this last time. So we learned a lot, you know. So thank you for allowing me to be up here. I really appreciate that. I'm able to get more done now than I ever thought I could. And I'll continue to work for all of you. I truly, truly will. You know, and if I don't, come get me. You know where I live. So thank you so much, and I look forward to you working with me up here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jeter.
Yes, sir. I would like to give a shout out to my 12-year-old daughter. It's her birthday today. Missed the birthday party. I told her, she said she'd be watching, but she's probably already asleep by now. This is one of those nights where you'd like to be first on the council comments, not just for her birthday, but Councilman Schmidt said it best earlier. I mean, I would echo word for word what everybody up here said. We can go on forever about the respect we have for everybody in this room. Congratulations, Debbie. Congratulations, Logan. Congratulations, Ben. Yes, I'm up here because of Travis. Travis is up here because of David. It's funny how a small town and small community works. That's how it's supposed to be. And just like Allegretto has said before, whether we agree or disagree, we're all going to see each other in the grocery store. We're all going to see each other on the street. So let's continue to have healthy conversation. Councilman Meade, thank you. I know we'll talk again, so I won't go on forever. Councilman Smith, thank you. We'll talk again. We won't go on forever tonight, but thank you. Looked up to you guys a lot. You guys are the veterans. Hopefully we can continue that same passion going forward. Mr. Mayor, I know you got a lot to read, so I won't go on about you, but utmost respect for you as well and your family and your service, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
I enjoyed sitting next to you a lot more than, well, I'll enjoy sitting next to Nick here soon too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meade.
To that, Mr. Brown and Ms. Riley, when I first got on city council, I think it's in 2013, I sat next to Joyce Gilly Gossam. She and I were different in so many ways. She wouldn't even spell her name with a capital letters, and I mean that in a good way. We never voted on the same thing. We never agreed. And I'd go home and I would silently be frustrated, but after about a year of doing it, it finally dawned on me that one of the greatest things that city council has given me is it finally dawned on me, I learned more from her than I did from the other guy sitting next to me that voted the same way with me every single time virtually. So what city council, one of the many things it's given me is the acknowledgement that we need to listen to those we agree with, but we really need to listen to those that we disagree with. And we may still never vote the same, and I don't know that she and I did very often, but every time she spoke from a position of being genuine and having researched it on her own. She had different life experiences and came from things from a different perspective than I did. And I'll forever be grateful that she taught me that lesson. But and Mr. Walker, I always listen to you because you come from a different perspective, and I mean that as a compliment. I genuinely do. I appreciate the fact that we don't come from the same position, and you really have taught me a lot, and I appreciate being able to be up here with you. Mr. Smith, since we're over there, I heard the word convicted about you. You're very convicted, and you've always stood for what you believed, but what people don't say about you is that you're willing to listen and change that position. And I've even heard you say one time that you were wrong. But my point is
only glory could get that out.
No, but my point is your conviction and your passion is not blinded by listening to people. And so I'm appreciative for a lot of things, but that's one of your great qualities. David, you were the one that said, John, you should come get back up here on city council. You probably don't remember it, but you're to blame for 4 of us, I guess.
Yeah, you're right.
But you keep us up in the clouds in a good way from the top perspective, but you bring us down to the details. So I appreciate everything that you've allowed me to do up here and being here with you. Mayor, you've protected the city. You've protected the cities working in the state. You've worked for the state, and you've protected our country. You've done it all, and you've done it with grace and class. But your biggest thing I think you've done is your family. You've got family all around. You're in every facet of the community supporting your family, and you're a person, and you're really a family to be admired, and the community does. So thank you. Mr. Jeter, thanks for letting me be up here with you. You're a great family man. I love hearing your stories. Great family, both your small and your large. I appreciate your business approach. From the Airbnb construction perspective, everywhere in between. We need those. I'm going to go to you next. Really looking forward to seeing what you do as the mayor. You're going to be great for us. It's a fresh perspective. It's going to be nice. You're very positive. I look forward to it. And we've been held to task since 2013 at least, and you've continued to do it. And you're being there and being here is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
So I thank you for letting me serve with you. Mr. Reeves, I mean, everybody loves you. So, but there's nothing to say.
I appreciate you and respect you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Ms. Barnes, you always kept after us, and thank you for everything you've done. Okay, Chris, builders like being here. They like the city. I know it's always a struggle with everything that we do in life, but I don't know, how many years have you been here?
Almost 14.
Okay, well, it shows. Before, builders would close their books and refuse to work in the city. Doesn't happen. They say the city does it great. And that's who I see on a daily basis. So thanks for what you do. Mr. Payne, all your systems, your knowledge, everything runs so well, so thank you. Ms. Neighbors, tonight was a good example of just another finely tuned department. Parks and Rec, I mean, what can we say? Thank you for being the guiding force in the county. So hopefully Crestview and the county will follow suit. So thank you. Police and fire, thank you all very much. Always ahead of the game, and we appreciate everything. So thank you everyone for letting me be with you. And Mr. Burns, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask my wife to come up and stand behind me, as she has done for the last 58 years. But I'm going to recap just some of the highlights of the last 16 years. As I sat down to try to reflect on 16 years, there's a lot of stuff. So none of it would have been possible without this young lady. So, I like that young. So thank you. I will say the last 8 years, it's been an honor and a privilege to represent the city at local, county, and state meetings and functions. At the state level, I served as one of 27 members on the Florida Metropolitan Planning Organization, commonly known as the MPOAC. I did that for 8 years, and the last 2 years I've been on their governing board, and then this last year I was on the executive committee of the MPOAC. Great honor. At the county level, I've been on one of the county's representatives on the Okaloosa Walton TPO for the last 16 years, and I'm a member of the Okaloosa County Transit Co-op for the last 5. Of course, I'm excited about the Brooks Bridge replacement and the foundational work that's already been accomplished on the Around the Mound. It's no secret, I have a passion for all things transportation. It's been my pleasure, along with the First Lady, to represent the city at multiple military functions, including change of command ceremonies, dining ins, dining outs, special award ceremonies, diamond sharp ceremonies, and commander's calls at Eglin, Hurlburt, Duke, Camp Rudder, and with the 7th Special Forces. Did you all know that a mayor, according to military protocol, is treated just like a 3-star general. What that really means is you get a reserve parking place and a front row seat at every military event. It's a real treat. At the city level, I've been proud to support the building and expansion of the Preston Hood Athletic Complex, the building and christening of the field office complex on Hollywood, the new addition to the Indian Temple Mound Museum, the moving of the Golf View to downtown, improvements to the municipal golf course, establishment of One Hopeful Place, expansion of business at the Commerce and Technology Park, and major enhancements at the landing and multiple other city parks. Being able to respond to citizens' concerns and frustrations via phone call or email has been both a blessing and a curse. Janie has had to endure listening to some calls and recorded messages that involve some pretty raw language. We believe we've learned the F word can be used as an adjective, an adverb, a verb, and a noun, all in the same sentence. But thankfully, for many of the complainants, we've been able to steer them in the right direction and have their situations properly addressed. So thank you. And that's because of the wonderful city staff that we have who take care of things when things are pointed out. And then there's Billy Bowlegs. How could I not fondly recall each and every Bowlegs invasion and the frivolity that goes with it. Each Captain Billy and his crew have been extremely gracious to include the First Lady and me in their invasion plans, their skits, and their post-invasion activities. And for the record, I did go undefeated one year. That was the year we had COVID, and that forced the cancellation of the Billy Bowlegs invasion. But it's been a lot of fun. And speaking of fun, the First Lady and I have enjoyed being invited to read to elementary school students at various city schools and walk or ride bikes to school with students from Elliott Point Elementary, along with our Fort Walton Beach Police Department. We also participated in multiple community bike rides with our fabulous Fort Walton Beach Police. Thank you, Chief Page. Janie and I enjoyed supporting our great firefighters as well. They rewarded us with an opportunity to don the appropriate safety gear and accompany them into the fire training tower filled with smoke to locate and extract an unconscious victim. What an experience. We also participated in the washdown and hand pushing of 2 new fire trucks into Station 6 Firehouse, upholding a long-standing firehouse tradition. Thank you, Chief. I've been invited to speak at elementary, middle, and high school classes throughout Fort Walton Beach about city, county, and state government and how it works. I should have gotten a degree in Civics 101. During my tenure, Janie has been afforded the opportunity to be an honorary commander at Hobart, a year she truly enjoyed. She now serves as a Chamber of Commerce ambassador, and that's a role she also treasures. We've been privileged to be at or near the front of multiple city parades, and who wouldn't love throwing beads and trinkets to hundreds of kids and adults? But on a more serious notes, Janie and I have worked hard to be visible and inclusive with our city's minority population. We are honored to be invited to many of our city's primarily black churches and to be included in many Latino festivals and other multicultural events at Chester Pruitt Park, at the Landing, and other city venues. As mayor, I've been invited to address multiple classes of visiting foreign military students undergoing training at either Hobart or 7 Special Forces. Many of those students have difficulty understanding how military and civilian communities can be successfully integrated, because it's just not the way it is in their countries. So I have to talk with them, and I talk to them about the mutual aid agreements that exist between the city and both Hobart and Eglin, the programs that exist and welcome and integrate their sons and daughters of our military members into our public schools. And I always give full credit to the Fort Walton Beach Chamber for making Fort Walton Beach such a military-friendly community. We love our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Another perk I've enjoyed as your mayor was being asked to judge everything from Lego contests to the best hamburger on the Gulf Coast, and which city has the best flavored drinking water in Northwest Florida. Ironically, the water I chose was Fort Walton Beach as the winner. But there was no cheating on my part because it was a double-blind test. It's just that we got the best tasting water, folks. That's the way it is. Janie and I were also privileged to be asked to judge an art contest at ADSO, and that's funny because I barely earned a C when I took art appreciation in college. And we've been privileged to serve as MCs at multiple public events. Finally, the most special of all the privileges afforded me as mayor in the last 8 years was being invited, along with the First Lady, to celebrate the 100th birthdays of 11 of our centenarian citizens. At their 100th birthday parties, I presented and read an official proclamation outlining their lifetime of achievements, and then presented each one of them with a key to the city for their many accomplishments. Tears of happiness and hugs broke out throughout the room, and it was an honor we truly cherished. I need to pause here and thank my wife for her unwavering love and support these past 8 years, She's truly been the wind beneath my wings, and I know she's the city's best cheerleader. Thank you. And now in closing, it's been a great run. Being your mayor gave me a whole new meaning to the phrase, "It takes a village." I know above all else, I alone have done nothing, and I alone can do nothing. It's only through the grace of God and the love and support of everyone in this room, everyone up here, that we've been able to accomplish anything at all. So now, as Bob Hope used to say, thanks for the memories. God bless you. God bless the city of Fort Walton Beach. And with that,